As usual.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. I love when other people. I know, I haven't had a chance to see it. We finally have no visitors. That's so sweet. I love when other people pick up books because they know like what they love reading. So far, Ty hasn't been into my dictionary game, but not yet. Yeah. Maybe not yet.
No, it's not canceled. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll call the March 11th Select Board meeting to order. We have a couple of minor changes to the agenda. One that people will be interested in is our discussion regarding the restriction enforcement of dogs on public beaches is being postponed because we do not have a full board this evening. We'll be hearing that next week or the week after. We'll plan for 2 weeks from now, but we might move it to next week. So just please pay attention to the agenda when it gets posted. And the sewer regulations will be heard right after the sewer master plan so that we keep those two items together. And I believe there's a couple of additional announcements. Libby?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded. The Finance Committee is holding a public forum tomorrow, this Thursday, regarding the 2020 annual town meeting warrant articles. That's, again, tomorrow, Thursday, March 12th at 5:30 p.m. here in this room. Department of Public Works has an info session regarding the Lovers Lane, Orkawa Avenue, and Monahans road improvement projects. That will be also tomorrow at 6 p.m. And we have another announcement, this might take a few minutes, about COVID-19 and a lot of information that has come out in the last 48 hours about it. So I'm going to give a little bit of an intro, and then the public health director is going to give some specifics. This is something that is emerging. It's changing. We got new information in the last 24 hours. So it took virtually the time of probably 6 department head level people today, almost all day, is what we spent on it. I myself spent the entire day on almost nothing but this. So we are going to be giving the board updates for the foreseeable future at every board meeting. We have information going out on all town social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, the town Facebook page, and also the town website. So if people are looking for information, it's all up there. We established a web page on this last week, and there's quite a bit of information on there. We have a link to the Nantucket Cottage Hospital website, which has very good information localized to the island. Obviously, not only in Massachusetts, but worldwide, many cities and towns are facing the same types of things that we are facing. So it's not like we're completely reinventing the wheel on a lot of these communications, but just to let the board know some of the things that town admin and other departments are working on. We've established a core incident command management team. We are meeting on a daily basis for the foreseeable future to make sure we are totally up on the information that is coming out. With this issue having been declared a state of emergency by the Massachusetts governor yesterday, and today the World Health Organization designating it as a pandemic, has gotten to the point where we have to pay very close attention to it. It is a serious situation. So the incident core team that I just mentioned has myself, police chief, fire chief, public works director, the health director, both assistant town managers, and the human resources director. Again, we're meeting on a daily basis. We are going to have a department head meeting, all department heads, as well as a representative from the hospital at a meeting once a week, again, to keep everybody updated on the same page. We're working on a number of measures that are meant to minimize the exposure and risk not only to the town's employees, but to the community, as well as keeping government operations going. And we need to put some measures in place in order to do that. I won't read out all of them because they're still kind of emerging, but they include things like travel restrictions for town employees. We are putting that into place. People are going to have to get clearance in order to travel. We will be restricting travel to places off island and possibly even on island, depending, to very large gatherings. For example, we have someone who is supposed to go to Mass Certified Public Purchasing Official Training tomorrow. It is apparently still on. We thought it might be canceled by the state-sponsored, but it hasn't been canceled as of yet. That person is not going to that. I am actually going tomorrow off island to a Cape Cod managers meeting. We felt that was important to go to because this is probably all we're going to talk about now. And it's a smaller group, and hopefully the risk is minimal. So travel restrictions, cleaning, obviously we're going to need to be stepping up, disinfecting surfaces and equipment and chair handles, door handles, all that kind of thing. And people are going to have to take some personal responsibility for disinfecting their workplace. We're going to be really trying to get staff people and all of you, when we get to come to a meeting like this, wipe off the table in front of you, wipe off the chair handles, wipe off the microphone buttons, that type of thing. But people, again, need to take some personal responsibility for that. Continuity of operations planning, COOP it's called, is something that we're going to be asking all departments to put into place. This is basically, there's probably a pretty long explanation for it, but basically it is identifying what the essential services of your department are, and there may be services that will be suspended for a period of time. It may also be things like employees wear gloves if they're going to be handling permits, money, various documents that come in from somewhere else. It may be things like requesting that the public email certain things instead of coming to an office. Things of that nature. We're not fully done figuring out what all of those are, but we had a very good start on that today. Also, public meetings. We are going to be requesting that all boards, committees, and commissions that are not regulatory, that are not required to meet a statutory purpose, do not meet for the time being, that they suspend their meetings until we know a little bit more and this becomes clear. This could be for, I don't know, anybody's guess is as good as mine, a couple of months perhaps, maybe more, maybe less. But unless you are, again, a regulatory board that must meet and don't meet. If this gets worse and we start having documented cases on the island, I'm not sure of the number we would get or what would exactly trigger this, but it may be that we would have to take measures for the regulatory boards. Maybe the select board would have to meet less or meet, I don't even know, somehow in a different way. We haven't totally explored that. I'm hoping we might get some ideas at Cape Cod Managers tomorrow. But also, again, we're not completely reinventing the wheel here. There is a lot of information out there. I probably had 35 emails when I left that came in probably between 3 and 5:30 that I didn't even touch yet because there's just so much out there. We're all getting kind of bombarded with email on this and communication, which is it's all good, but it takes a lot of time to go through it and sort out what we ought to be doing. Big events are going to be under review. Even those big events that are not necessarily town events, but big gatherings, if they're outdoors, they might not be such an issue, but we're not 100% sure yet. There may be indoor gatherings that we have to look at. We have taken no action specifically on those yet, but we are sort of awaiting legal and state advice. There is a big meeting, though, that we need to discuss, and that is the annual town meeting, which is scheduled for Saturday, April 4th. We had some discussion about this morning with the town clerk and the moderator, who are both here, and town council and the finance director and some other staff. And do you want to explain this? Or we were working on basically a contingency plan. And Sarah has a very good handle on, the moderator has a very good handle on what that is.
Sure. I mean, obviously, it's a fluid situation. We don't have any cases yet, so we're not making any decisions at the moment, but we want to be prepared. So at the moment, the plan is as follows. There is a provision of Mass General Laws that allows me to consult with the Board of Selectmen. It does not need to be a public meeting. I would suggest that we could do it at a public meeting. It doesn't have to be. I have to consult with you, and then after I do that, I can make a determination and determine that the meeting's going to be postponed for up to 30 days. The plan at the moment would be to come to the meeting on Wednesday, April 1st. That night, confer with you. We'll see where things are at that point. If we think at that point that the meeting needs to be postponed, then on either Friday the 3rd or Saturday the 4th, I'd make the determination. There's a form that I have to fill out, sign. It gets posted on the website and all the places where the warrant is posted. And we would, at this point, we're talking about postponing as far as we can, which would be May 2nd, Saturday, May 2nd. I know that's probably, some really important date for someone's birthday. I have no idea. None of this is convenient for anyone. We're probably going to have to suspend the electronic voting for this meeting. Nancy Holmes, the town clerk, is going to be in contact with our vendor, alert them that we most likely will not need them on the 4th of April. I think we're going to try to keep them on the hook for as long as we can, just in case we decide that we can go forward with the meeting. In the event that we have to postpone, I think it's unlikely that they're going to be available for a subsequent meeting. I know we had looked at Monday, May 4th as an alternate, but there are a ton of other town meetings scheduled for that date. So that's why we thought about the 2nd. I don't know, Nancy, if you had a chance to talk to the school.
I did email the school, but I didn't hear back from them yet. But,
Okay.
May 2nd is a possibility for the e-voting, but May
Okay.
4th is not.
But we don't even know. I know SATs are on the 2nd, but hopefully they'll be in a different area of the school. So then, that's kind of as far as we've gotten in terms of definitive planning. But if you're going to say, well, 30 days isn't really very long, and that could be when it's really horrible, the next step from there is, and of course, I should back up and say that there's all kinds of legislation that's pending right now that people are proposing that will deal with all of these emergencies. There may be things dealing with the election, for example, budgetary questions, because if we don't get our town meeting done and approved by July 1st, there are all kinds of things that then start to back up. So I think there are going to be, it's all just starting to happen. So stay tuned, because I think there's going to be all kinds of special legislation that's going to come through. I know there's some stuff that's already pending. But at the moment, what I know is if we get to May 2nd and, we're still at the height of a time when people really should not be meeting publicly, we can convene the town meeting, the chair of the selectmen, select board, the town clerk and I, and maybe a couple of other people would meet at the high school. We'd convene the meeting, and then we could postpone to a date certain. So as time goes by, we'll start looking at dates beyond May 2nd. Now, of course, none of this is going to be convenient. Once you get past May 2nd, we run into all kinds of horror shows in terms of summer and plans that people have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll, I'm sure, figure out a date that's the least inconvenient date that we can.
We talked earlier today a little bit at the agenda meeting about the possibility of, would the least worst situation be a midweek? But potentially, but we just are going to have to,
like a Wednesday or something, yeah.
Maybe
So
to have the availability of the electronic voting.
we may not have the
No, but
electron-
maybe there would be a day that would be
that's-
better to
that's
be able to
possible,
have
too.
that available, because we were really excited about that.
I know, we were really excited about it. I know, selfishly, I'm really bummed, but anyway. So that's the story. It will be evolving.
there's another issue with the election.
Oh, does anyone have any
Jason had a
questions for me
question.
before
I had one question on, let's say we decide to do it August 1st and everything calms down then. How does it work fiscally? I'm sure, because we need a budget, right, to pay people come July 1st. Is there provisions, or is that working right
There's-
now in the state?
There's currently provisions that allows a town to operate on 1/12 of their prior year's budget, but that doesn't necessarily extend beyond the operating budget. So if there were projects, for example, capital projects that you had hoped to get underway, under the current legislation, those wouldn't be funded. And I'm not even sure if things like the revolving funds would be covered.
I'm sure we're figuring all that out. That's kind of my,
Yeah, that's kind of,
will we be
I
able to pay
think
people to continue to have the basic services?
those are the things that people are dealing with the legislature on right now, trying to address. So, Christy, did you have a question?
My question was about the election, but I think
Okay.
Lydia was just
All
going
right,
to
great.
touch on
Thank
it.
you.
I was just going to say, and Nancy and Sarah, or whoever was at our meeting this morning, if I'm not saying this right, let me know. The election, as already set for April 14th, will proceed unless the Secretary of State is going to allow towns to have a different date. So in our situation, we'll probably need to explore this a bit at a board meeting at some point, if that authorization is going to come through. When we talked with town council today, he thought that it was likely to give towns that flexibility. So we'll have to determine that, because we were kind of trying to run through a little bit of scenarios. So if we keep it as is on April 14th, that will mean that some of the ballot questions, most of the ballot questions would be acted upon prior to town meeting, which is okay. It doesn't have to be in an order. But there's a, political aspect to it. So we'll have to just figure out.
It's hard to not have had the discussion at town meeting first, is my fear, on the spending articles particularly.
Yeah, it's a little funny for me to say like, oh yeah, we should move the election up a couple months. And I'm running again, right? So do I recuse myself from that decision, or?
And Rita was hoping to get away from us.
A couple more meetings won't kill me. No. Yeah, I think hopefully we'll see what happens if we come to that. But I do think it would be awkward to ask for people to vote on something that we hadn't discussed. So I would tend towards having the meeting first and then the election.
So that's kind of emerging, so we'll get back to that. So unless there's other questions about town prep at the moment, I'd like to turn it over to Roberto. He's going to give you the details on, things like the nitty gritty, the testing, all that.
Well, Libby and Sarah very eloquently handled 90% of my statement, so I'll only be here a few seconds this time. As of about, 6:18 right now, as of 6 hours and 18 minutes ago, the World Health Organization did declare this as a global pandemic. What does that mean? The definition, all it means is that it has local transmission in a majority of the developed world. That's it. It's not a reason to panic. It's not saying that this is out of control. All it's saying is that it has crossed borders and it's there to stay. That's all it is. So what we're looking to do is we can expect here slow the rate of transmission in the population. So there's actually a really great graphic that I'm going to be putting up on the website that has been circling around about the difference between an epidemic curve where there is no mitigation work done and how the spike will go up above hospital capacity. And then if there is mitigation, which is what we're trying to do, prevent the spread, prevent transmission, how even though there is still cases among the population, is it a slower and more gradual case in a way that the hospitals and the healthcare system can respond. So hoarding masks, hoarding gloves, Purell, bleach, things like that, that helps no one. I know it's really easy for people to think that if I protect myself, I'm protecting everything, and you're actually putting more people at risk by hoarding masks, hoarding cleaning solutions, hoarding disinfectant. We're recommending against that. There's a lot of information on the coronavirus website on the town. That's nantucket-ma.gov. There's a lot of information on the CDC's website. Would you mind clicking on the Staying Healthy resources on the left? So I believe this should be up. Damn, it's not up yet. Okay, so I'll connect with our webmaster to get that published. There is a series of videos that we're going to get published. Everything from hand washing to what the face masks procedures are and why you shouldn't be wearing face masks now, how to put on gloves, how to take them off without causing cross-contamination, and a lot of frequently asked questions. So please feel free to connect with that. And then, as of right now, we still do not have any cases on the island. That is, number is still 0. In the state of Massachusetts, we do have 91 presumptive positives and confirmed. What does that mean? A presumptive positive means that it's been confirmed at the state laboratory, but has not been confirmed by the CDC yet. They do 2 confirmatory tests before they can call it a full confirmed, because it could be a false positive. Then we are not currently quarantining anyone, and we have not seen anyone presenting to the hospital with anything meeting. So those are all rumors. We all know how everyone loves to talk about the Nantucket rumor mill. This is something you don't want to spread rumors around. The rumors can cause panic and can create misinformation, and this is not misinformation out there for. Yes, there is a large mass hysteria caused by the news that a lot of people are saying, fake news, things like that. You can hear that from both sides. You'll hear it on Fox News, you'll hear it on CNN, that the others are trying to trump it up. No pun intended. It is still a disease that you want to pay attention to, regardless of what you think about the news cycle that's out there. It is still something you need to pay attention to. We do recommend that sort of social distancing aspect of it to prevent that transmission. I have been in contact with the schools. We're in constant contact with the hospital. I've been contacting with a lot of the lodging groups on the island. I had communications with the Chamber of Commerce today. So we are trying to connect with each group individually. And if you have questions, please contact me, and then we'll be putting a dedicated email address on the website as well once we get that up and running, a coronavirus email, so that we can get all the information into one location so that you're not getting piecemeal information from each individual department head. We're trying to centralize communication. And with that, I'll just take questions. And
I just had one. Roberto, I trust you. You have about 15 PhDs, and you're going to get another one. And so I would love to get a list of the solutions and the wipes that I mean, I've been in different websites, and there's like 5% of me doesn't trust it. So, but if you tell me like, here's the wipes, here's the solutions, bleach doesn't work, or the 7th generation wipes that I use, those type of things. If that's already on there, that'd be.
It's
great.
not up there yet, but I'll be putting that up on the Staying Healthy resources link. There's a chart. I have a chart that I'll be putting up that includes the dilution factors for a bleach solution. Not all bleach is created equal. So if you look at your bleach, you have to make sure to see if it's a 5% bleach, if it's a 6%, or you can buy bleach at 3% solution, 5% solution, or 7% solution. And then there's the commercial, the industrial application, which is a 15% solution. You really have to pay attention to the dilution factor. What you want is a 1 part per million solution of bleach as for sanitizing, if that's what you're going to be using. Quaternary ammonium works. So when you look at, I thought that was actually a Lysol wipe. Libby, would you mind throwing me your Lysol bottle? Yeah. Oh, perfect. So, oh wow, this one's massive. So it's really important to read the back for anyone watching, and for your information as well. On the back of the instruction, there's always a section that says to sanitize or to disinfect. And it's really important to read this information because you hear a lot of words thrown out there: disinfect, sterilize, sanitize, things like that. Those words are not the same. We use them interchangeably in everyday vernacular, but on a public health and in a microbiological scale, they have different definitions. So to disinfect usually means just to clear out enough bacteria or viruses to make it relatively useful. Sanitizing is to kill off a target bacteria. Sterilization is to kill off all the microorganisms on a surface. So on the back, it'll say to sterilize, first pre-clean, and then use enough fresh wipes to thoroughly wet the surface, and the surface must remain wet for the entire contact time. What are the contact times? To sanitize, remain wet for 10 seconds, which is your typical wipe off. But to disinfect, allow to remain wet for 4 minutes. So that's a significant amount of time. So you have to make sure that you pay attention to the contact time. Lysol can kill it off. 7th generation can kill it off. Clorox wipes can kill it off. Ammonia wipes can kill it off. You just have to pay attention to that contact time. Some of them are 4 minutes, some of them are 3 minutes, some of them are 10 minutes.
That's kind of stuff that would be great to be up there.
So that's the
Individual
information
products.
that we're going to look. And I'll see if I can get pictures of multiple ones so that I can get that out and put that on here.
Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks. I guess we'll be doing these updates every week.
I forgot to mention, the Civic League is sponsoring their annual Meet the Articles Forum, which is this Saturday from 1 to 3 here. And I think since we don't have any cases on the island yet, we're okay to keep up with those types of gatherings, but I think very shortly we're going to need to curtail them.
Okay. This is the public comment portion of our agenda for anything that's not otherwise on our agenda for discussion.
Good evening. Last week I should have introduced myself, but I didn't. My name is Rosemary Samuels. I've been living here as a year-round resident since 1999. And there are 3 questions I have for the Chief of Police. But before that, I have something I need to say. In 2018, my son, which is a middle schooler, got hit off his bike in the middle of the pedestrian crossing on Bartlett Road. He went over the bar of the bike, onto the wood of the girl's car, fell on the ground, and even though there were witnesses there, no one called the police, no one took a picture of the license plate, but they posted it on Facebook, and that's how I found out. The only reason I found out is that I took up my iPad, I was going to read my Bible verses for the day, and I saw this. I went on Facebook for some reason, and I saw this article that someone posted by the name of Heather Williams that she witnessed the kid got it off his bike in the middle of the pedestrian crossing because she stopped to let my son go by, and the car came and went around her car, hit my son in the middle of the pedestrian crossing, and one witness says she saw the person who hit him shoved her head through her car and said, "Is he okay?" and drove off. Nobody called the police. Nobody took a picture of the license plate, but they posted it on Facebook. When I started reading it, I was like, oh my God, this is not good. But when I got to the middle of the article, it says an African-American kid between 10 to 12 years old with a golden water bottle. And that's what I used to identify my son, the golden water bottle. I called the police, and they came with me to the hospital, spent all night at the hospital with my son. He did an x-ray which showed that he had inner bruising in his chest. The officer said to me before we left the hospital that she'll keep in touch. Nothing. I called the police station numerous times, nothing. I've visited, nothing. Nobody got in touch with me. I became so angry that I was driving all over Nantucket searching for this white BMW car to see if I could find out who hit my son off the bike, and still nothing. Someone told me to go to the steamship to see if they could access the camera of all the cars that came on the boat. I went there. The manager told me that they could not do anything for me, but I should speak to the police. They can help the police to do that. I went to the police station. I reported what the manager of the steamship told me. Still nothing. I went to Mr. Cozart at the school, asked him if he could access the camera that is pointing to the pedestrian crossing, and he told me that that's not the school's responsibility. I said, my son is a student in the school. Kids use the bike path every single day, use that pedestrian crossing every single day, whether school is in session or not. He looked at me again and said, that's not my responsibility. And August is going to be 2 years, and not one day has the police ever called me and asked me about my son or had anything to say to me about it. And not teachers from the school, people of the community called me, texted me, and said to me, nothing is going to be happening because he's a black kid. I did not want to believe that because I did not want to bring race into whatever happened. But I've come to believe that it's so, because up until today, not one police officer has ever said anything to me. I went to the station and I said to the officer, I spoke to Officer Mack, I said, I cannot do this anymore. I've become so angry because there's no justice for my son, who was just 12 years old at the time. And I cannot do this anymore. All I wanted to do is, if I see that girl, I would want to ask her if it was nighttime when everybody was in the restaurant because it was in the heights of the summer season, or do in the nightclubs, it should have left my son there to die. And it makes me sad to know that the police of Nantucket Police, Mr. Pittman is going to be upset for me to say, but I'm going to say it because it's the truth. I've come to realize it's the truth. The police department takes sides. They take sides. They don't look out for the black population or the rest of people from different countries in this community, which should not be so. You have to come to realize that this is a new Nantucket. Nantucket has changed from what it has been. It's become a diverse community. We're out of many one people, and justice is supposed to be for every single one in this community. And my second point is that this is 2 years since this took place at the African Meeting House. Today makes 2 years. Nigger, get out of here. And nothing still hasn't happened. And I asked the question yesterday. I directed to Mrs. Gibson, and she didn't. I'm going to be honest, you did not answer me truthfully. And Mr. Pittman, you did not answer me truthfully.
Excuse me.
I am going to
Madam
speak
Chair,
the truth.
no, this
I
is
am
not
gonna
the
speak the
forum for
truth.
this, and don't you dare say I did not speak truthfully, madam.
If residents of the community knows who.
This is
Rosemary,
on the building.
we've got to end this.
No, I'm going to speak. If residents in the community knows
No,
who
you're not
wrote
going to
it,
speak.
students knows who wrote it on
This
the
is
building.
against the regulations.
Do you want to
of
tell me the
board's
police
agenda
does not know
policy.
who wrote it?
Rosemary.
Shame on you people, because you are no better than the parents who pay to get their students into college. No better than Laura Loughlin and
Rosemary,
the rest
these
of
are
the
really
parents.
serious accusations, and
I can speak whatever I want to speak because my kid is still suffering. My kid is asking me going to Gosnell every week. My kid cannot sleep at nights. I cannot get a good night's rest because I have to be there for my kid.
Madam Chairman, I would like to go on record to publicly state I completely am dismayed and angry that someone would stand up at this meeting and say that I was untruthful about something. You can come to the board at a later time if you have a charge to bring forward, but there is absolutely nothing I was untruthful about last week.
Residents of the community knows who did it.
Then why don't they go to the police and tell them?
Spoke who did it.
Why doesn't the police know that?
those people need to take that
Why
information.
does the police do
Those
not know
people
who did
need
it?
to take that information
Well,
to
this nigger
the
is
police.
going nowhere.
Rosemary, it is a horrible thing that has happened, and what happened to Christopher is a horrible thing.
Not one
about to
police
get up and
has
leave.
ever come to me and asked me, "Oh, what's my kid doing?" I have to put my kid in Gosnell. My kid goes to Gosnell every
All right.
single week. I'm afraid to let my kid go, and he wants to go with his friends on his bike, and I'm afraid to let him go. I bought a bus pass for him for $120, and he doesn't even want to use it because he just wants to ride his bike with his friends, and I'm afraid to let him go.
Rosemary, I appreciate you telling me this. I didn't know this story at all.
Yes, and
So I appreciate
thanks
you.
to all the residents of
Yeah,
Nantucket
Rosemary, now you're not on the mic,
for
but
my son, bought him back a bike and helped me with him to get through this.
Maybe the,
Not one day the police has ever come to, I've been to that police station so many
maybe the
times.
chief could get you some
No one.
information
I sat
about
there
your
one day
son's
and they told me that the
accident.
officer in charge is on the street, and I sat there for 3 hours waiting on him and never showed up. I became so hungry with it that it started to affect my house life.
I think that this is the first time that I think the incidents are being connected.
We cannot hide from man, but we cannot hide from God. Because he sits and he looks low and he knows.
Rosemary, if you're going to
knows
keep talking, you have to come to the mic, but I think that we should probably end this conversation
Chief of
for
Police
tonight.
has 3 questions for you. Last week,
No,
you
no,
cannot
Rosemary,
speak
you
for the
can't
chief. Last week-
can you go speak to the chief, please?
If he wants to speak to me now, I can speak to him. If you want to come outside and speak to me, you don't want me speaking, I can speak. But you said something last week, and there are 3 questions I need to ask him. You said you
No, you need to go through me. I'm sorry. I just need to get control of this. You have to ask the questions through me, and I will try and get you the answers. But
Okay.
you need to put them on the record and ask them through me.
The chief of police said last week that there's a person this person was not cooperating with the investigation, was the investigating officer. Could he disclose who that person is?
I don't believe that he can disclose details of an ongoing
Okay, next
investigation.
question for him. Who are the local officers that are being accused of covering up for their child? He cannot answer that either?
Okay.
Next, third question.
Whatever is viable for you to answer.
Let's just try to talk through the chair.
Yes, just please go through me.
I mean, I think this is an improper forum for this. I think this is really an improper inquisition. I said, but quite honestly, the individual that has made allegations without naming names is sitting right there in the room. And you guys have entertained his speeches 2 or 3 times before you. He implies that police officers or family members of police officers or somebody have been involved in this, yet he has refused to come forward and talk to the police, either us or the state police or the DA's office, I imagine. I don't know that one for sure, to give us the information he knows. If he knows something, we can't do anything about it unless he tells us what it is. Now, we understand if he thinks we did it, why he wouldn't want to tell us. That's why the case was turned over to the state police, so that they could do the investigation. I mean, that's all we can say. We've heard rumors that, I mean, you said, kids have said they know who did it. We've talked to kids. We've talked to every kid we can come up with, name-wise. Nobody can tell us who did it. If we can't guess this stuff, if you've got a name, tell us, and we will investigate that, or we'll pass it on at this point to the state police. But right now, nobody has told us a name. They just say, everybody knows. Well, everybody but us knows that. Everybody but the people in this room, except for Mr. Barrows, apparently knows, because he
Not Mr.
has
Barrows
said
alone,
several
sorry.
times he knows.
Not Mr. Barnes alone. So because on Tuesday I was coming out of the grocery store and this landscaper stopped me and he named 3 names.
Well, then they need to
The
call
first
us and
name
tell
he
us.
said he named one
no.
kid.
Please don't say
I
the
don't
names.
call, okay? Okay.
But please report it to the
Yeah.
state police. It is in their hands, and everybody
You know what?
wants justice on this subject.
Let me tell you this. After what I saw happen to my son, and not one police officer, even though they told me they were going to get in touch with me, never did. August is going to be 2 years, and not one. I've been for 6 months, I was in and out of this police station, and still not one. I cannot trust the Nantucket police anymore. It's sad to say, but it's the truth.
Jim Barrows. I can't sit here and listen to the chief of police tell a lie. My attorney, wrote a letter to the chief of police department. We are willing to cooperate with them and give them our information, what I know, right? Under these rules, right? I do not trust the police department. I do not trust this. But
Do you trust
come
the
to
state
come
police?
to our office. Come to our office. Come
Okay.
to my uncle's William Carmel, Civil Rights Federal Consultants, right? Sit down, relax, take your feet off. I don't care if it's stinking, right? And we'll talk. I got a letter from him. They don't do business like that. I got a visit from a police officer at our junkyard 2 weeks ago saying this is going to be resolved. We know who it is, right? Hello, right? And you're telling me this police department doing a good job. And he sits up here and tells a big old
Jim,
lie.
remember, this investigation is no longer with this police
I went
department.
to the Cape and Islands
It has
District
been
Attorney's Office
turned
a year
over.
before they did.
It has been turned over to the state police.
And I went there a year before they did. Officer Martin called me back. I called him back 6 times. No return. Right? You call this fair? My group is not going away. Thank you.
I think just to note that all of this has been noted by the board. And again, first time that these have been connected for us. And I think this is an issue that we have talked about, but it was a while ago. And I think race issues in the town are something that we don't talk about enough. There's no one really left to ask, but I know for myself, I'll look in to see what sort of resources there are when there's issues with police and communities all the time, unfortunately, and see if there's any resources for some sort of mediation, or when community members feel like they don't have someone they can go to within a police department or a law enforcement department, where do they go? Because if they can't go to our local police and they don't have a connection to the state police, where do you go? So again, something that we haven't brought up again in a while and should.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Are there any other public comments? I don't believe that there's any new business. We do have some minutes to approve from September 25th.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we have a sewer master plan presentation. I'm going to turn it over to David Gray.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. With me tonight is Dan Sheehan, Kent Nichols, and Drew Patnote, all from Weston and Sampson, who I'll be turning this over to in a second to go over through this master plan. What a brief description of a master plan is it we have current CWMPs that we've had done in 2004 and 2014. This actually dives much deeper into those plans to take and look at every flow from every potential parcel on the island, and not only to see flows from parcels, but how the flow gets from that parcel to the treatment facility. So this is a much deeper, in-depth look, and Dan's going to take it off from here and go from there, and so we'll have questions after. But as you can see, it's a pretty thick document, and it covers everything from pump stations to sewer pipe sizes and streets to neighborhoods, that which way they flow and everything like that. And they're going to touch on all of that tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dan, and then we can, if we have any questions after. So.
Do you want us to ask questions after? Is that the best?
You can ask questions as we're going on. That's
Okay.
fine. That's fine.
Thanks.
No problem. And I promise I will not touch on every street in this town, because we'll be here all night. All right. So the purpose of the sewer master plan, as David kind of alluded to, is that it's basically trying to figure out how and where we're going to connect all the existing future wastewater flows into the town's current system. As you said, you folks had done a comprehensive wastewater management plan back in 2004, which identified the needs areas for future needs. And that was then updated 10 years later in 2014 to further identify the needs areas and update those even further than from 2004. So what we're doing in the master plan is we're not redoing the needs analysis that's already been done, but we're taking that a step further to figure out, exactly which properties will tie in into the system, so we can calculate the flows. So you see the scope of work from our study here. That's the slides we'll be talking about further on in the presentation. Just as a quick background, this is a figure of the existing collection system in the town. You'll see the colored shaded areas are the existing tributary areas to the Surfside treatment plant. I should state that the master plan is for the town sewer district, and that means the collection system you see here that flows to the Surfside treatment plant. You have a second treatment plant out in Sconset. Was also a CWMP was done in 2004 for that, and that's now being updated again in 2020. So this master planning effort, a similar planning effort is being done as part of that CWMP in one complete project. So you see the colored areas here. The area in orange flows to the C Street pump station. The area in blue is all tributary to the Surfside Road pump station. The light green area, or the brighter green, is to the South Valley station, and the kind of olive color is goes to the Monomoy South pump station. And then the gray areas you see outlined are the future needs areas that were identified in the previous CWMPs. So all the wastewater flow from this area is all pumped to the treatment plant by those 4 pump stations. So the first task was to develop the future wastewater flows for these future areas. We had several meetings with the town staff, including planning, sewer department, the health department was there, natural resources, town administration. And we sat in a room for several meetings, identified all the areas that are going to be for future wastewater flows. That includes the needs areas identified in the CWMP, any planned development and redevelopment within the existing town sewer district, and then allowance for building construction based on current zoning regs. This would include the potential subdivision of properties as well as the building of secondary dwellings on certain properties. We've had, like I said, several meetings, pretty extensive, going through parcel by parcel for all those areas. Spent a lot of time, and we have a bunch of pages of data for each of the properties. This is a sample from the Matticat area. This is the page 9 of 9 for just the Matticat area, which basically shows you a listing of all the properties, all the JS and the assessor data, such as property size, acreage, how many potential lots can be built on that property. We use this information to tally up and come up with the wastewater flows. So we did that on the flow sheets in the back of the master plan for each of the areas. So once we came up with the flows, the wastewater flows, we came up with our evaluation of the routing alternatives. And this is just a summary of the recommended routing. So the needs areas, Hummock North, Hummock South, and Somerset will be tributary to the Surfside Road pump station. That was the blue area on the map. The Matticat and Warren's Landing area will be pumped directly to the Surfside treatment facility. The Maya Comet needs area will be pumped directly to Surfside. The Shakamo area will be tributary to the Monomoy South pump station. That was the olive green area. So we just completed construction of the Monomoy South pump station and the Shimo and Plus Parcels project. So that pump station was sized to handle the Shakamo flows. And the last area is the wellhead protection zone, which will be tributary to the airport pump station. That is the small needs area north of the airport, where the town is looking to put a new water well. We met with Wanacomit Water, Mark Willett, and they're investigating the potential of putting a new well in that area. So we found it prudent that if they do that, and there's some issues with septic systems in that area, you'd want to add those to the treatment plant to protect your future well. This is a sample of Matticat. We have a figure like this for each of the needs areas. This is a preliminary layout of what the sewer system would look like. And you'll see for Matticat, it's all orange lines, which means it's low pressure with grinder pumps. That's similar to the Shimo area that we just completed. So all the flow will be pumped to the little red dot up there in the DPW. That's going to be a brand new pump station that we'd be installing. And from there, that would pump out to the existing force main for C Street, 20-inch force main. And from there, be pumped directly to the treatment plant. That's different from the previous CWMPs. Those had the flow going to other needs areas and being pumped from different stations. So once we did our routings, then we did a downstream collection system analysis with a hydraulic model to determine whether or not the existing systems had capacity. And as you can see here, the Surfside Road system does not have capacity for the existing flows. As you remember, so I said Hummock North, Hummock South, and Somerset are all coming in to the sewer lines on Vesper Lane and Bartlett Road. It would flow to the pump station. So the town's actually, and we're working with the town on a design right now for Surfside Road, that area, to upsize the lines. So we'll get a new 12 and 15-inch gravity sewer on Surfside Road, a new 12-inch sewer on Bartlett Road, and a new 4 MGD pump station at Surfside Road. And there's actually an article on your town meeting warrant to get the new parcel of land across the street so they can build the new pump station in that parcel.
So the lines don't have the capacity, but the wastewater treatment facility does.
Yes.
The
Oh,
end,
yeah. We'll get that at the very end. But yes, the treatment plant does have the capacity. That's been upgraded.
Right.
Back in the previous upgrade was designed to increase the capacity for the future needs areas. And our flows are very similar, slightly bigger than they were in the CWMP, but within the capacity of the plant. So this is a figure you can see here. Well, maybe a little hard to see, but the blue areas, you see the new sewer lines going in on Bartlett and Surfside Road, and the new pump station going across the street, and the property that's owned by Miles Reese right now. And then Vesper Lane, if you recall, we just replaced that line with a new 12-inch line under the Shimo project. That's part of this capacity analysis that needed to be done. So since we needed to replace the line then, we did it at that point in time, instead of trying to put a smaller line in and then come back a few years later and dig it back up again and make a bigger one. So the other section, the system that needs to be updated, is the airport system, a very small section. And I can show you this drawing right here. There's a small line on Miller's Lane, a 10-inch line right across from the airport. That's laid fairly flat, so that needs to be upgraded to a 12-inch line to accommodate the future flows of build-out of the airport area. The town is planning to replace the airport pump station, so our recommendation is to include that 130 feet in with that project, so that would get done a lot more economically as part of that project.
Sorry, Madam Chair, when you say airport area, do you mean just what we see here, not Richmond and all that?
No, Richmond is a separate area.
Right. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
we're
it's
just
the
talking
area.
about,
It's the area that flows. Actually, I can show you real quick.
like Monahasset and.
Yeah, so you see that the right side of the. Oh, look at you with the tools. So it's basically this whole area right in here. The Richmond area is right here. That flows by gravity to the South Valley Pump Station.
Right.
Sorry, I'm not in the microphone. But it's basically the build out all the area up in here.
Okay. So Macy Lane, all that.
Yeah. And again, so when you're doing the pump station, you might as well do that. It's a small 130-foot section of pipe that needs to be upsized. Otherwise, the rest of the sewer line in the area has sufficient capacity. Okay, so then we also, as part of the master plan, we did an evaluation of 10 of the town's pump stations. 3 pump stations recently built or upgraded. C Street was just upgraded. Wamasquid and Monomoy South pump stations was just built as part of the Shimo project. So there's no need to update those. So we provided a recommendation, or I guess a memo, with all the recommendations for improvements and upgrades to all the pump stations. Currently, the sewer department's planning upgrades for the airport, Aurora, Cato Lane, Pine Valley, Surfside Road, and South Valley pump stations. So, the recommendations can go towards those upgrades. Obviously, the Surfside Road is being replaced, though they're not going to bother upgrading the old station. That will be replaced with the brand new station across the street. The Maya Comet Needs area includes a new gravity sewer going down South Shore Road directly to a new pump station at the treatment facility. The positive about this is we'd be able to eliminate 2 of the existing pump stations, Safeton's Path and Sherman Commons, as well as any proposed pump stations that are proposed along South Shore Road. The Blueberry, Abrams Quarry and Blueberry, we cannot replace. It's set too low, so we can't put the new gravity line deep enough to pick that up. So that station would need to stay.
Can I just ask, what's the advantage of replacing these pump stations or making them, we wouldn't be using them anymore, so would we have them as backup or do they just disappear?
They would disappear and you wouldn't be paying for power and electricity to run them with staffing. So they would just disappear and not be used anymore. Those properties that flow by gravity into the new gravity line down to the treatment plant.
Thank you.
And we've already talked about the new pump station for Surfside Road. So next thing we looked at was the force main system. This figure is the existing force mains and pump stations. So you have C Street Pump Station, Surfside Road, South Valley, and Monomoy South. Those are the main stations that pump all the wastewater to the treatment plant. And these force mains, the 3 force mains, all tie together at the treatment plant and flow into one 20-inch pipe that goes to the headworks of the plant. So the system has some very complex hydraulics. So for instance, right now, like Surfside Road and C Street are both tied into the same force main. So when they both operate, they impact each other. So we created a model to try to understand the different dynamics, the hydraulics of the system as, one pump station is running versus 2 versus 3 versus 4, just to understand how the system runs. And right now it runs very well. It operates the existing system. However, we're now proposing to add like quadruple, basically the size of Surfside from 1 MGD up to 4 MGD. So we're adding a lot more flow into the system. So that's going to change the hydraulics of the existing force main systems. So what we did is we looked at, again, a future proposed system. So extending sewers to the CWMP areas requires those 3 new stations in force mains. So Madigat will tie into the 20-inch force main, Surfside Road will tie in, and then the proposed Maya Comet station, that'll pump directly into the 20-inch line at the plant. And what our modeling told us is that there will be issues if all the pump stations are trying to run under the one force main. So right now the town's looking at building a third force main. The current second force main is out of service. You folks are very well aware of what happened with that one with the break. So Dave is only using that as an emergency. So you folks are looking at building a brand new force main to tie in C Street. So that design is going to have to incorporate all of the new potential new pump stations, force mains coming in. And then David will have a brand new operating plan so he knows what pump stations will operate which force mains.
Quick question.
Yep.
David knows this. I have to ask because I'll forget in a second.
No, it's okay.
If we do a third force main, is the C Street pump station ready to go? Did we design it for a third one?
Yeah, well, it'll use one at a time under most situations. The only time you may need a second force main in operation is during very, very high flows, like you have a lot of rain events, peak summertime flow, large rain event. When Surfside and C Street are running at that capacity, you may want to run, that C Street may need to run through two force mains at that time for a very short period of time.
We don't need to redo C Street.
No, not at all. Nope. That's been sized for all the flow for C Street's fine. Yep.
I asked, we just put a ton of money and work.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The new force main is just to kind of replace the broken one. The town doesn't have a lot of confidence that it's going to be something they want to rely upon for service. Okay, so now once we did all the flows analysis, figure out where all the flow's going to, we took a look at the Surfside treatment plant capacity. So we have all our projected flows and loads for the needs areas. And by loads, I mean what's the pollutant load going into the treatment plant that needs to be treated. We analyzed the current flows and loads at the treatment plant, and we came up with the established the updated estimates once all the new needs areas are all connected into the system. And the conclusion is hydraulically the treatment plant's sized to handle those flows. So you do not have to go and build the expensive process tankage like those large underground tanks. Those are fine. Those can handle the capacity of all the future flows. What you do need to work on is some of the ancillary systems like solids handling and aeration. Those are removed from phase 1 due to budgetary constraints, so those need to be put into the next phase of upgrades at the plant. These are more process related, not capacity related issues. And that will also include a lot of aging systems. The station has pumps and control systems that are old and need to be replaced. So those are going to be looked at in the next phase of work. And probably over the next, that work will be done completed over the next few years. And then the last issue we wanted to touch on was some of the wastewater resiliency issues. So you see here, the first one is the reduction of flow to C Street. As you folks are aware, C Street is located in the floodplain down by the downtown. It's very susceptible to flooding. You guys did a great job fortifying that station with all the recent upgrades to protect it. But in order to, if there is some, downtown does flood during some climate change events or whatever, we're going to look to reduce the amount of flow that goes to C Street. So the Monomoy South Pump Station, the old station, used to pump to a gravity line and go down to C Street. It's now, as part of the Shimo project, it's being pumped directly to the treatment plant. It still has the capability of going down to C Street if there was an issue with the force main going. So that's another resiliency issue where now it has two locations. Under the Surfside Road project, David asked us to look at extending the gravity line from Vesper Lane up to Atlantic. By doing so, we could transfer approximately 50 properties on Atlantic, West York, and Prospect. Instead of going to the C Street pump station, they would go directly to Surfside pump station, the new one. That would take that flow out of the downtown area. Previously, the town had rerouted Airport Road pump station. That used to go to C Street, but now that flow goes to the South Valley pump station. And again, that has the ability to go to C Street if it needs to, if there's an issue with South Valley. And then we limited the number of homes or properties from Hummock North that would go to C Street. We only have approximately 15 properties that we can't send down to Vesper. It's much more cost effective just to tie them into the existing sewer lines that are basically right there. So there's only 15 properties out of probably 600 or something. Reduction in the number of pump stations, obviously they'll save you power cost and maintenance of maintaining stations. We kind of already discussed the My Comment Needs area, how that would take away 2 pump stations for you. One of the issues that needs to be discussed is Somerset. So we have a plan for Somerset, which will have a pump station on Bartlett Road, which will pump up to the existing Bartlett Road sewer near Appleton. We have a second option, an alternative option, where the potential is to go across the golf course with the gravity line and install a pump station at the end of Mizzenmast Road, which is right next to where the Pine Valley pump station is. As you saw earlier, Pine Valley needs to be rehabbed. So in lieu of replacing Pine Valley, we could put the new Somerset station down in that area, and you could eliminate 1 pump station altogether as a potential. So that's something obviously we need to look at, is whether or not the town can get access across the golf course for a gravity line and get property which is owned by the land bank. So there's a lot of issues to discuss further on. We're building a brand new Surfside station. Your current station is about 34 years old. It's time to be replaced. The equipment's beyond its useful life. So you'll have a brand new station similar to C Street that's going to be brand new for hopefully another 30 or more years. And I've already kind of discussed the backup force main issue, which is another resiliency issue. Each of your force mains has the potential to have each pump station have multiple force mains. A lot of that's going to depend on the actual route of the third force main as to whether or not it's going to go by the area where Mattocket's going to tie in and whether it's going to go by the Surfside Road. That would give additional options, but that's to be determined still. And the last item we were going to talk about is, obviously you guys have experienced a lot of coastal erosion in areas. This is mostly probably Mattocket and Hummock South, which are more susceptible to that. So the low pressure system, if there's ever an area that got washed out, we'll install valving that we can turn off the flow from those areas. So if those pipes that were cracked or broke, or those areas washed out to sea, you could shut the system off and still operate the remaining of the system. Again, most of the areas that would not a concern, but the low-lying areas near the ocean, I think that was, would be of concern for you folks. And that's it. Unless you guys have some questions you want to go over.
Well, I can just say I went to some of the meetings you guys had through this last year and a half process, and it was really helpful me understanding the bigger picture of it's really proper planning. It's not just trying to make room so we can build more. Right. I really had to come in and understand the whole process to see how it's going to work. Doesn't mean that we're going to sewer more, but if we do, here's the steps we have to get even to do that.
One of the main benefits for David now is he has a plan in place. Yeah. So he's continually had developments. You guys are well aware, developments come in. So someone comes in and they're not on the sewer line, so they put a low pressure system and pump up to David's system. And then he turns around and the town's going to install a line past that neighborhood, a gravity line. So now you can look at the development and say, okay, here's the plan. We're going to put a gravity line. If you want to connect, you're going to install the gravity line from point A to point B, and then you can build your system from there, instead of having spaghetti lines all over the place, which is what has happened in the past. So it's a very useful tool for him and his department.
That's good.
Are the master plans updated roughly every 5 years?
What's that?
Or how often, what's the time frame for this master plan and how often are they updated?
The CWMP was updated every 10 years typically. The master plan, I don't anticipate you'd be updating it.
Okay.
It kind of really depends on when you folks decide to vote in or the rest of the system. I mean, if you're coming back 20 years later wanting to add Hummock South or North End at that point in time, then you may be looking at changes and updating it based on what the existing system has changed since that time.
Right. Thank you.
I think the action for us is whether we're ready to adopt this master plan.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
so
very much.
Thank you, David.
And we are still on to the sewer regulations. And our action on this will be to actually schedule a public hearing.
Just pull up the. An evening, everyone. Again, thank you, David Gray from the sewer department. With me tonight with the sewer regulations that we're going to be going through. The regulations last were updated, just a couple pieces of it in 2012. Prior to that, it was like 2008, and then prior to that, it was back in the early 90s. So what we've done, working with Frank and Frank's team, and with Weston as well as on a lot of this, is to take and try to clean everything up. There's been a lot of different terminology now. We now have tertiary drillings where we didn't have those before. You know, we had cabanas now that were called something else in the past. So what we've tried to do with the regulations is to take and we went through every single line item. They've all been renumbered. Before they used to all be in the 200s code. With the new E360 code stuff, we've had to adopt new numbering systems. We've had to add different other pieces as far as, for an example, and we'll talk about a little bit more, cannabis, you know, any kind of cannabis production or harvesting or growing. What's that waste stream going to do to the wastewater that comes into the treatment plant? So we've talked about those very specifically. We've had some other issues with them. You know, it was brought up at another selectmen's meeting in not too long ago about fixed incomes or senior citizens. We've had to take and adopt that now into a regulation that we've just recently added to take and bring everything up to date. So with that, we'll take and start to go through. You guys have had it in the packet. I don't know if you want me to go through every single line item with Frank or were there specific areas you'd like me to focus on. I mean, you know me, I could stand here and talk all night. So that's it's up to what you or how you'd like to do it.
I think for me, I read through it twice. It's not easy to understand if you're not really in it. So I think what are the things the public needs to know the most? What's the biggest change that's going to affect the most people? Whether it's a fee from 150 to 30 or some regulation of you have to be your primary resident first, or I'm
There
sure you have
are
questions, but
definite term. There's some fee increases and stuff like that. So we've taken again, some of the fees hadn't been updated or changed in many years, but it's because of the different services now that we're providing. As we go forward, you know, sewer permitting, those fees hadn't changed in many years. We just added, over 400 connections in Monomoy and Shimo area, so that there's different stages of different things. And Frank, I'll let go into it a little bit deeper. But this has been an ongoing project now for better than 2 years, at least. We've also finally, and many people remember that there was what used to be called the CUF, capacity utilization fee. Then it was called the sewer privilege fee. Those have all been intertwined now. We're going to call it one certain thing. So it's there's been a lot of work and with a lot of people involved with the town. So with that, Frank Ayodas from Hazen and Sawyer, he's been doing all of our regulations with his team. Saya Quayles, who's not here tonight, but I'll give it over to Frank.
Yeah, the biggest thing with the regulations in their current form now that the board has, so they've been reviewed by the sewer department, the Board of Health, the planning department. This board has reviewed them once already, and most recently now, Town Council John Giorgio. So at this point, we would look to have the board review the regulations on acting as the sewer commissions and essentially adopt them. It's come to, as David said, it's come to our recent attention that the board would like to see a policy on fixed incomes for Social Security, senior citizens, a potential fee waiver on that. We've drafted a policy on that. We'll be turning that in this week as part of a packet for you to look at. I would like to have that in your packet before you adopt. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, and we have something at town meeting on that needs to, don't we have to do that first?
What was the question on?
No, never mind.
Okay. The documents that you have received as part of your packet for review this week included the response to the legal comments, so John Giorgio's comments and our responses, an executive summary that was basically all the changes kind of highlighted and what the actual regulations were, and then the regulations themselves. Okay, so those were the three documents that you had received. Following adoption, the plan is for Hazen and Sawyer acting as the town sewer regulations consultant, working with the sewer department, David Gray, to meet with different stakeholders like the Builders Association to kind of roll out the regs and present the regs. As you said, they are a little bit confusing. They're a big change from what the town has in store right now in terms of all new fees. There's all kinds of different permitting, and there's enforcement. So I think it's important to roll that out to the stakeholders, particularly the contractors and all those folks filing the permits. These are the steps you have to take, because there are consequences to not following it. So, any questions?
I have two questions. It was highlighted. They were both highlights in the documents. One was we'd had a problem with cabanas before, and some of the fees, and outbuildings was highlighted. And it was highlighted that sanitary facilities are counted as bedrooms. So does that cover pool cabanas, and are sanitary facilities
Correct.
sinks,
So basically,
toilets?
outbuildings with bathrooms, essentially.
Okay, so a sink only doesn't count as a sanitary facility. It's a
The
bathroom.
way the regulations are written now with the SPF, every structure requires a separate permit and a separate fees. What this new regulation will do is, instead of having to charge the 6322 or whatever the final to each individual structure, we can count the outbuildings as just bedrooms for a different fee, which ultimately could be lower. If there's 17 other bathrooms, it could be very much more, but it all depends. It's that way you don't have the cabana with a little kitchen sink and the toilet in it getting the same as the 7-bedroom house. So we've looked at all those, we've worked all the numbers out, and I think we've hit everything that we could. And there's been some recent conversations that we've had here where people have said that, I only have a bathroom in my garage, and we had to charge that fee. That's now being able to be broken out.
Great. My second question was, it looked like fines for installation of a sewer without appropriate permits was decreased.
Correct.
Is that?
There was no current way to enforce any of the. It happens, and people are installing sewer lines on weekends or whatever like that, and we either get calls from people or we're in the new regulations. It's going to allow us with prior authorization that they'll be able to work on a weekend or a holiday, but they'll have to call us, and there'll be a fee for that. Currently we have no way to monitor anything on weekends or holidays. Unless someone catches them doing it, or I get a text that says, I just did this work today. If we'll do prior arrangements with them, and there'll be a fee for us to come out on a weekend. The on-call operator will come in, and there'll be an overtime fee. And I think that's going to work. And that's some of the conversations I've had with the contractors is because they're so busy, there isn't enough time in the day during the weeks. And they are doing them on weekends, and this is a way to help have the town capture that we need to capture it without having everything covered over. And then here's a picture I did. So
So previously, they would do the work on the weekends, and then if it was discovered, they'd be paying the $8,000 fine.
Yeah, it's to basically to avoid backfilling the whole excavation and then not having the town the ability to inspect it.
Okay.
And then, without having them to dig it back up again. So
Right.
this keeps the whole process moving, both with the contractors and the town's ability to inspect the work at any and all times.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question on the cannabis growing facility. It seemed like what's coming out as wastewater, we don't want to go into our system because it messes up the biology, but we don't want to go into the groundwater. What was the end result?
So we eliminated the prohibition of going to the sewer system itself. However, we added a article for best management practices adopted for cannabis waste itself, and those should be included in your packet.
The thing with some of the cannabis waste is we were more concerned with a lot of the oils and stuff like that because that creates problems in the system downstream. The two facilities now that have been permitted, both are considered zero waste facilities. And we did a lot of work with them, with Roberto and everyone. We actually met with them all. And they're going to have separate tanks that if it has a large cannabis waste in it, that they'll have to call a hauler like Clean Harbors or whatever to haul that waste off island that could handle it. It's just, we won't be getting impacted by a lot of heavy flows from them.
And that's part of the best management practices you should see in the article.
Okay.
In regard to the deferral for senior citizens that we talked about, I just needed to look it up. It's Article 89, and I think that we have to adopt that at town meeting before we can incorporate that. Is that, it's acceptance of Mass General Law sewer user charge deferrals for eligible citizens.
And what we did in the current articles, under Articles, I believe it's 306 or 336-17, it says that this Board of Sewer Commissioners has on a per basis, can take and waive sewer connection fees. You guys can waive this currently sewer privilege fee. But we've never had any way to be able to, for the senior citizens or the fixed income people, we've drafted a response to that article, just in addition to that one article, that will call that out. Well, again, we'll give you guys the ability to, if someone comes in, there'll be a form, some kind of a Article 61 or Chapter 61 form that they'll have to fill out to verify that they are fixed income or whatever. But there was never a means before. So now we've included that as a means, and the warrant article is going to have the ability also to take and connect to this. But right now you have the ability to only waive certain fees, and this will be to give you more power to be able to waive some of those other fees.
On a case-by-case
case basis.
Yeah, so my question is, if we postpone town meeting, when do we schedule this public hearing to actually finalize these regulations?
I don't think it ties into
Okay.
having to go to
We
the
could
public
adopt
hearing.
these
You can adopt
without
these.
this vote at
That's-
town meeting.
I believe so,
Okay,
yes.
that's what I wanted to get a handle on.
John and everyone at KP Law has reviewed them all, and all of his comments have been
Yeah, and
incorporated.
that was not a comment on having to have that meeting for you to adopt these regs.
Okay. I mean, I think for the public, they'll be most concerned about the new fee structure.
Yeah.
And the definition of the outbuildings, which I think is a great clarification. So do we
Great.
want to schedule a public hearing? Or are
Yeah.
there any other questions? Any public questions?
Now, just keep in mind when you're scheduling a public hearing for this, it's regulation, so we need 3 weeks for advertising. So we need to push it out to accommodate that advertising timeline.
Do you have a suggestion? I can look at the calendar.
Well, the one thing that, as far as we can go for just an adoption, so you can adopt what we've presented to you, and then we've been asked to take and present it to some of the other groups. Will they have more comments or suggestions? Possibly. Will this be the final document based on their comments? We don't know. It's, Board of Health we met with, they had some comments we incorporated, Planning Board as well. These other comments that might come from the real estate group that we're going to try to meet with, and the Builders Association, something may come out. So there may be some changes still, but this is the document as it is now. So
Do you think April 22nd is a reasonable
So
date?
we're not meeting on the 22nd? That's school vacation week.
29th.
So the earliest we could do it is the 8th, or we could push it back to the 29th, but that's our real estate meeting also.
May, maybe
I don't think that we should do the 8th. I think that's
Yeah,
too
no,
soon.
I think that's it. Possibly maybe the
and
1st
right,
in
we
May
did-
because
the 29th is
Yeah.
the 5th, but we
moved
canceled
it.
the 22nd.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the 29th.
it should be. All right. It's a matter of just if when the Builders Association meets and then when the real estate people meet. That's just, we need to make to reach out to them tomorrow to get contacts and dates that they meet as well. So we can present at their meetings.
And there's no date that this has to be approved by?
No, not right now. No,
Okay.
there isn't.
But we would like to get the regulations kind of adopted in their basic form. Any and all changes beyond that, the commissioners can certainly adopt new articles. But
Right.
right now, I think we're pretty far along, and it's a good time to go through the review for the adoption.
Okay.
Do you want to do it on the 29th or the 6th of May?
Anyone have a preference? Why don't we do the 29th, and if anything comes up and we need to open it and continue it, we could.
Okay, so we'll make sure that it's advertised. Do you want to?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Dave, I have one more question for you. What was it, just to clarify on the easements? So we put sewer in and we get an easement with the property owner. And I think you wanted it to be in perpetuity, but town council came out, or there was some problem there.
So, things that we found recently with when the sewer force main, for example, had its failure, we had to take and get into where the lines were. We ended up finding that there was areas that had been paved over. There were structures on the trees had all grown over. We have one subdivision that we have now that there's a sewer easement that runs entirely through it, but almost all the propane tanks for the entire development were put in the easement on top of the sewer. So this is something that we're trying to take and move ahead and finally be able to have something in the regulations. Do we want the full 25 feet that we were originally asking? I mean, 25 feet might have been an extreme, but we need to have something that's outlined and it needs to be laid out that, if there's an easement running through, what's one of the recent ones? Sachem's Path had one. They wanted to put some fences and some plantings and stuff like that. And we pushed back on that because we have to have access if something happens. So, the easements have been where it's a challenge. It really is, because if we have to have an easement and then take someone's property, there could be fees for that, and the town could have damages and stuff. So we did it for the Schimmel project. We took easements on all the private roads where the road was supposed to be laid out. I mean, that was a challenge all by itself. But easements have been tricky on the island. They really have. So this is to try to clear it up. We're just trying to clean a lot of the language up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Marine Mammal Alliance presentation.
So my name's Pam Murphy, and I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to address the board. I'll give you a little background as to who we are and why we're important. And for the purposes of this discussion, why what we do is important for the town of Nantucket, to the extent that we could embark on a mutually supportive relationship. So Marine Mammal Alliance Nantucket, also known as MAN, we're an all-volunteer team, many of whom are sitting right here, that holds a permit issued by NOAA to respond to marine mammals in distress. This permit is known as a stranding agreement and strictly outlines the requirements and regulations put forth in the Marine Mammal Protection Act. It mandates emergency responses to marine mammals in distress and to monitor health and health trends in marine mammal populations. What constitutes distress or stranded? A live marine mammal unable to return to the water, or a live marine mammal in need of medical attention or relocation, or a dead marine mammal in the water or on the beach. In the stranding agreement, a lot of attention is paid to responder safety, animal safety, protocols, reporting, data and sample collection, and stuff like that. Teams play a valuable biosurveillance role for NOAA. We are required to collect data on strandings and UMEs, which are unusual mortality events, such as what's going on with whales right now, and report back within 24 hours. Our team is part of the Greater Atlantic Marine Mammal Stranding Network, which covers Maine to North Carolina. Our jurisdiction is Nantucket, Tuckernuck, and Muskeget. So because of our stranding agreement, our team members are allowed to approach marine mammals protected under the MMPA. The only other authorized individuals would be law enforcement, in other words, the animal control officer or the environmental police, with whom we have worked in the past. It is dangerous and illegal for unauthorized members of the public to approach or aid stranded marine mammals. We respond to entangled, distressed, stranded, and deceased marine mammals, seals, dolphins, porpoises, whales, as well as sea turtles. As you no doubt heard, we relocated a stranded dolphin just last week with the help of the International Fund for Animal Welfare from the Cape. We maintain a hotline 24/7 to take all calls. Last year, we had 300 calls and responded to 280 animals. We are level A trained by Mystic Aquarium, and some of us are more trained in stranding by IFAW, which means we can approach animals to subdue, disentangle, relocate, capture for transport, to rehab, or assist in euthanasia without breaking the law. Under the strict guidance of NOAA Fisheries, our stranding agreement requires that we respond, investigate causes, document and report any human interaction, aid in the collection of any UME data, take samples, and to help identify trends and diseases, including reportable emerging zoonotic diseases. Anyone else who causes a marine mammal to change its behavior is technically breaking the law. We have the second highest response rate on the East Coast, despite minimal access to outlying areas, a very small team, and absolutely no funding. In 2020 so far, we have responded to 69 animals. Nantucket's beaches are accessible to all, so we experience a significant amount of human interaction, which is illegal for unauthorized individuals. Seal pups are on the beach for weeks after they're born in December and January. After they're weaned and molt, they may wander into car tracks, roadways, parking lots, lawns, and may even follow humans if mom isn't around. Seals haul out on the land for about 40% of their life cycle and can stay out of the water for days, right up and through the summer months. Although seals are not aggressive, if approached, they will bite, as any fearful animal would. Seal bites are dangerous in that they can be traumatic and infectious. The return of the seal population is a sign of a return to a healthy ecosystem, as is the presence of sharks. Humans are learning to coexist again. So how does all of this affect the town? Over the last 2 years, our numbers have increased. 222 responses in 2018, 280 animals in 2019, and we are already ahead of last winter's calls. In 2018, the Nantucket Police Department called MAN to find solutions to their being overwhelmed by calls from the public concerned about the welfare of seals on the beach. Dispatch now has our hotline number posted and regularly refers us to people who call. If the public sees a marine mammal out of the water, they get concerned, especially the less knowledgeable summer population. They want someone to call. The public does not want to see animals suffer. They want to get a hold of someone who cares, is knowledgeable, can tell them what to do, can make decisions, and respond to the animal if needed. They don't want to be told there's no one to help. Thanks to MAN and our stranding agreement issued by NOAA, we have a strong, positive response. When a call comes in, we ask for details, advise the caller on safety, respond with volunteers, place signage, address the needs of the animal, and consult with NOAA scientists if necessary. But the big part of it is informing the bystanders. The public needs to be educated for their own safety. They want to take a selfie with their toddler. They want to pet the puppy. For the safety of the animals, they want to pour water on the dolphin or drag it back into the water by the tail. for compliance with the MMPA. More animals are stranding and hauling out than ever before, more than any other territory in the greater Atlantic region. We respond to populated beaches regularly all last summer, with many beachgoers approaching us, asking questions, and thanking us for helping. Were it not for man, the Marine Mammal Protection Act would require compliance be provided by local authorities. Someone would have to enforce the law. Somebody has to advise the public and protect the animals. I suspect Chief Pittman is not interested in taking that on. If someone gets bitten, the town could face litigation by the injured party if no one was addressing the responsibility of safety and education. Neither town employees, NPD, nor the environment or police are trained responders, so they could injure or be injured. So what's my point? We do all of this with no funding source, and the current situation is not fiscally sustainable. Team members are stretched. As mentioned, we took 300 calls last year and responded to 280 animals. In most cases, responses must be immediate in order to disentangle an animal before it returns to the water, and more importantly, secure an area from human interaction. Team members who can leave paying jobs to respond. Because this responsibility would otherwise fall to local authorities, we are requesting the town to consider a modest annual contract of, say, $100,000 with MAN to do the following: maintain the hotline, take all calls from concerned citizens or public officials and other conservation organizations, determine the nature of the situation, instruct a reporting party, send volunteers to observe, disentangle, or triage, secure the area if in a populated area. If deceased, send team members to get data and possibly collect for necropsy, notify DPW for disposal if appropriate. Place and maintain signage to educate the public on marine mammal behavior and the Marine Mammal Protection Act regulations, mitigate any seal-human interaction through education, and help prevent possible litigation by an injured party. It's good public relations for the town to be seen as proactive in the public and the tourist eye concerning the suffering of animals. We gladly work with town departments, the DPW, Natural Resources, the lifeguards, and other conservation groups to effectively uphold the MMPA. Without MAN taking calls, responding to animals, placating and educating the public, and keeping the public safe would fall to the town, mainly the NPD, as sections 109H and 112C of the Marine Mammal Protection Act allows law enforcement to take action. Lifeguards at beaches would be responsible for educating the public and keeping them away from hauled out animals, a distraction from their other duties. Only MAN and a designated local, state, or federal official can approach a marine mammal, the environmental police or the ACO in our case. We are already trained to deal with stranded marine mammals where the town police are not, and lifeguards are neither trained nor authorized. That is a safety issue for town employees and the public. Animal control is already stretched dealing with domestic issues, and the environmental officer, when we have one, is busy dealing with other wildlife problems. In conclusion, the public does not want to see apathy from the town when it comes to suffering animals or be told there is no one to call. The town does not want to see people breaking the law or engaging in risky behavior. So far in 2020 alone, MAN has responded to 69 animals. If people go to the effort to find our hotline and call, they are very concerned. Sorry, no one can help you is not what they want to hear and would be very bad PR for the town. We feel the requested funding is reasonable given the extent of the services we are and have been providing. There is no funding from NOAA or NOAA Fisheries. There is a very competitive grant process which is currently beyond our means to pursue. These funds would help support team members' out-of-pocket expenses, purchase gear, tools, gas, necropsy supplies, cremation costs, insurance, educational materials, vehicle expenses, boat maintenance, training, conferences, and continuing education for team members. Lastly, we would also request a place to put our tiny house where we store our equipment, maintain a freezer, and perform our necropsies. So that is pretty much what we had in mind to request. I have team members here who are ready to answer your questions if you have any about marine mammals, about what we do, about the science, about anything. So thank you.
Thank you.
Tonight I wanted to get a presentation kind of on what they do and why it's important. And obviously our budget has already been set for this year, and we'll need some response from different town departments in regard to how they've handled things and what they think about the possibilities here. But definitely open to questions about the organization. And
I have a question. Some of it's more about the logistics of a contract, but firstly, do you keep track of man hours or people hours that have gone into the 280 animals that have been rescued?
Not really, no. It's just, you kind of just, you get the call and you jump and run. And I don't know as we've actually tracked hours or not, but it's definitely something we could do going forward. The reason I suggested a contract is because at NISHA, where I was one of the founders and board president, we have a contract with the town to take care of all the, the stray animals. And it just seemed like a logical parallel to look at it that way, as performing a service for a sum.
And my only question about that was whether or not there would have to be an official for that amount of money. Is there an official RFP that has to go out? And that might be something. So Brian's nodding his head yes. So I'm not sure that many people would be bidding on it, but I think there's a process that would have to be followed.
We'd have to get a lot deeper into the logistics. I wanted to start this tonight with a presentation of what they do and why it's important to the town. And then I think that we'll need to get internally talk about how to respond to the request.
I think for me, understanding approximately the number of hours that go into this would help the town understand the capacity to actually be able to do it without contracting an organization like MAN.
That makes sense. Cool. We can do that.
Are you a nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay, so that's helpful. Right, so similar to NISHA, right?
Similar to NISHA, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm on the email list. So I get the emails every week when Scott and the team send everything out. So I've been keeping up with it for years. So I know it's a valuable service. I know if this stopped and disbanded, it would either just not get done because all our departments, whether it's Public Works or Natural Resources or Sheila, Harbor Master, just don't have time and training to do this. We're so busy. So it would either not get done or it would take time away from current services. So I think it is valuable. One question I have is, a lot of the beaches that it would land on would be land bank land, trustees, Audubon. I think everybody should put in a little bit to the, we should be the main one, but if it's something like 50 and 25 from others would make sense because you'd be doing work on land bank land and trustees land, and you're all over the map. You're everywhere. Private property. So I think it's worthy. I want to support it. I know we can't for FY21, but if we can find a way and keep the conversation going, because if it's 220, 280, if that gets to 350, there's going to be more pictures like that in the summer. And it's unfortunate that NOAA doesn't give us any funding for it, not even a little bit, because they're the ones that would come down on us if something wasn't done correctly. So it's kind of, they probably don't have the funding to give, but I wish there would be something there. That's all I have right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I wanted to get some of the information presented in a public forum and start the conversation, is what Pam and I had talked about. And we'll continue to figure it out from here and be in communication.
Yeah, I think all of us are in agreement that it's important, just finding that funding source.
Right, the services are important, and I think that's another one. If there's a breakdown of the 100,000, so that if there's going to be more than one funding source, once we understand the different components of the budget, that might help with understanding how it could be funded as well.
How many members are on your team? Like, who's actually certified to go out and do something? Who's trained?
Well, you know, we trained about 32 people, I think, when Mystic came out and did our formal training. But in actual fact, there's probably 10 of us that can get out there and do the responding, and 5 of them aren't here in the winter. So it gets a little tight.
Right. And the training isn't like you just go online and take a quick course.
No.
Right. It's pretty thorough and intense. I just want the public to know that they're not just reading a book and going out and saying I'm certified.
Right. And sure.
Hi, may I address the board? Burton Balkine. I'm a Marine Mammal Alliance Nantucket team member. Me personally, I've done probably 5 or 6 different workshops and consortium training, so it's involved going off island and getting a lot of training. I'm also HAZWOPER trained, which if there's an actual oil spill, I'm one of the, I think, 20 people in New England that can actually go to just to part of a disaster where oil was spilt and marine mammals. I'm not allowed in the epicenter, but I'd be on the exterior helping marine mammals as part of an ICS incident command situation. Also, I just want to address Rita's point about time. I mean, we just rescued and released a dolphin, and I think it involved like 8 team members over multiple days. And the actual rescue and release was probably about 8 hours from start to finish. So, I mean, that's one end of the spectrum. But, I mean, a lot of times we're collecting data on dead animals. I got one, and Tom Nevers yesterday with Rain, one of our team members is not here. And it was probably about 3 hours for 2 people from start to finish. And that's more typical. So, I mean, you times that times 200 responses, or 260 responses, it's a lot of time involved. And that doesn't even include like going in. I mean, anytime I go out to a beach and I have my vest on and I'm approaching a seal, I'll have 5 people come up to me and ask me questions about everything. So there's a lot going on there for us team members, and we put a lot of time. And plus, we also have meetings that aren't, planning meetings and strategies and how we're going to implement what we want to do. So, and one other point I want to make is, as we're moving into the future of Nantucket and we see our building economy, probably the window's going to be shrinking on that as we run out of land to build and place to build. And we have to think about our economy in different ways, maybe as a blue economy, as more ocean oriented and environmentally friendly. And I think the town getting ahead of this and putting on, look at we're ahead of this, and we're supporting a group like the Marine Mammal Alliance. It's going to be a good thing, because I think that's where the future of Nantucket's going to lie. Like Blair doing his SEAL tours and that kind of activities are going to be more the critter. What's it called with the critters that go out on the boat? Yeah, the critter cruise. Those kind of things are going to be more and more important. So I just want you guys to to think about that as in the future, and understanding that there's not money in the budget this year, but think 5 and 10 years down the line too, because I think it's going to be really important for us to put on a good face like that. So thank you.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Scott, did you want to say something?
Hi, Scott Leonard, the Stranding Coordinator for Marine Mammal Alliance Nantucket. We are the only fully volunteer team of the 16 teams from Virginia to Maine. They all have at least 1 full-time paid staff. Most of them have many more than that. IFA, who just came out and helped us, has paid interns, paid medical staff, paid coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not trying to compare to that, but we're just my point would be to bring into this picture the fact that IFA has responded to 30-odd animals now. We're at 68. Yes, they do more science because they have that ability, but we've got a really huge and amazing ecosystem out here and resource. And these animals, one day in that 5 or 10 year time, it would be nice to be doing that research out here and have that part of the overall picture of the Marine Mammal Alliance Nantucket. So again, just throwing that out there in the future, and thinking about how we are responding to, we are the #1 team in the region now in terms of animal responses, because they live here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
That makes me think
My
how.
name's Hugh Lloyd Thomas. I'm also involved in Man. I'm on the board. In relation to, I think your question again about the hours, as an example, we had applied to the Prescott grant, which is a competitive grant from NOAA. As part of their review, they asked that we provide then reviews of other applications. So I had to review 9 other applications, and that took me about a week. It was about 40 hours. And so that would be just another example of the additional work that we have to do in order to be able to get grant works. And it's a very competitive piece. And as Scott mentioned, there are other organisations that do far less than we do. One of the reviews that one of the grant reviews that I did, there was a group in California. They do about a third of what we do. They have 14 full-paid staff. They have a gift shop. They got money for a 24 animal freezer because they have a 12 animal freezer. They got money, we didn't, because they do research, and that was one of the things that we were dinged on our request for funding. We're not doing research. Well, we're not equipped for doing it, both in terms of staffing and equipment. So again, whatever we can get to then start so we can build up to that point, that will then also allow us. And I think it's quite often a situation where you've got organisations who get funding. Once they seem to get funding from other sources then get interested in that and they're willing to give more. And of course, and I also did some grant work for the NHA as an example, and the NHA and the hospital sort of suck all the funding out of everything, seemingly. But once we can get some funding, that then attracts some more funding as well, and that would then dissipate the level that the town might be required to be able to put in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question was kind of, actually Hugh touched on it, is what are other towns doing, and the people that you guys have been working with, are they funded through towns or funded through grants? And then also just thinking, if you need to add science, how could you collaborate with somebody like Mariah Mitchell Association so we get the science portion and research? Just another idea to throw out there.
Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for
all
the
for
work.
being here. We really appreciate it. We have some public hearings this evening. The first is a public hearing to consider application for a mobile food unit license for Hang Loose Frozen Treats. Chris Couture, manager. I will open the public hearing.
If I can just take a minute. My name's Amy Baxter. I'm the licensing administrator, but I just feel the need to say that I am also a very, very proud civilian employee of this police department, and take personally any attacks on their character or humanity, and just felt the need to say that I am honored to work with all of them, fire and police, and they are some of the best humans I know, who are imperfect as all of us, but really make tremendous sacrifices every day that people don't realize. And although they are very good at taking this type of thing and not responding, I couldn't. It was just an attack on my family, and I include Libby in that. So
Thank you.
I apologize if I'm subdued with these public hearings. These are all great applicants. It has nothing. I just wanted to say, I took that personally, so I just wanted to speak for them. Okay. I cry at commercials too, so sorry. That's just me. And trust me, they annoy me on a daily basis too, so they're not always perfect, but they are good people. Okay, first is a mobile food unit application. This is a little different than a normal mobile food unit application. In 2016, when we kind of started dealing with these applications and came up with some guidelines, the select board voted to allow for some roaming licenses. Only in the case we selected 12, I don't know why at the time, we just said we wanted to limit the number. We haven't had any applications, and what we wanted to do was just limit it to ice cream and frozen treats type of things. We didn't want to have roaming vehicles in neighborhoods that had full meals or anything of that sort. So at the time, that's what it's limited to. And again, in those few years, we haven't had any applicants, and this would be our first. So that's what's going to be different about this application. Chris Couture, who is also with Strong Winds, who, if we are going to test this out and see how this works, is I think the perfect applicant for this. He's worked very hard kind of on this application. Again, and a lot of these too as well, we have them go through the plan review and work with us on locations and stuff prior to actually purchasing the vehicle, because it obviously is a very big financial commitment. We want to make sure that they work with the health department and can kind of meet those needs, and that's something that works for them. So that's kind of where we are. And we come to you at this point once they have been fully approved by the health department, meaning their plan review. I think we also have a picture of the type of vehicle that he's looking to use. It's not going to be the typical big unit that you're used to. It's smaller, which is great if he is going to be going to neighborhoods. So we've been working with him, and again, he's been great in doing all his due diligence with certain property owners. It wouldn't be something where you're stopping for ice cream on major thoroughfares. We've limited that. It's not going to be on Surfside Road or Old South Road. He's working with some private neighborhood associations, something like Gnaw Shop and things of that sort. So he will be getting permission from those neighborhoods when he's doing that. As far as we have a proposed route in there now, we're looking to approve the license, and of course he would have to have property agreements and permissions prior to issuing the final license. He's here tonight as well to answer any questions, but so that's going to be the process there. He's working with Land Bank as far as stopping at Cisco Beach, which is one of their properties, working with the school and working with the town for any stops like at the skate park, fields and that sort. So, any questions?
I thought it was really thorough.
No, it's great. And again, like when we have something new like this, it's nice to have someone like this to test it out and see how it goes. I think it'll be great. And he's certainly in the... I hear that. I don't remember ever seeing one here. But I don't know if he's going to have a bell or anything. But
Amy,
so...
Did you say it's still like the 500 feet away from restaurants
Well,
and ice cream shops? Is that...
We have that again. I mean, I'm not supposed to say this before it's completely done, but we're working on actual regulations. Health department is going to review and going through that. I think what I've seen in other towns is it's about 200 feet is because 500 feet, say Whaling Museum, 500 feet radius would be like almost to St. Mary's area or stuff. If you think it's huge,
past, right?
Right. So, but what the consideration is if they are in certain areas that would be near is permission and working with those common viculars in that area. We restrict downtown, the historic district and that whole downtown area. We restrict, obviously sometimes they're used as catering vehicles. In that sense, they need to get a street blocking permit to park their vehicles, but they can't serve out of it in the downtown district. So there are restrictions, I think, that we put in there too as well, certain beaches. So basically anything, anywhere he goes or a route really has to be approved by property owners, neighborhood associations and such. So it's not going to be, he's not going to randomly just, or.
Yeah. I always say this to you, Amy, like I'm for this, but I have to ask the questions to do our due diligence. So if I'm running an event at the Chicken Box and I'm going to pull up, but it's right next to, I don't know, Kitchen's ice cream place. You know what I mean? Like where I just want to make sure.
Correct.
Thought through everything.
It's difficult, obviously, if it's private property that he's on, and they are allowed to do private property and private events of that sort of thing. We wouldn't want something that's set up on a regular basis near another common vicular. Now, in that case, obviously, Island Kitchen has a mobile food truck, which is allowed because of, he has a common vicular holder. So again, we're kind of on the approach until we get through and finally vote on final regulations that it's kind of a let's work together kind of situation. But any location or route on a license would be pre-approved and discussed. And he's been diligent about that.
Do we have any rules on music? Is there music planned?
Yeah, it wouldn't be, well, I don't know if there's going to be music. Do you want to answer? Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I would kind of love to hear some music, but I don't know if I'm the only one.
Hi, guys. First of all, I just want to say that it's been a tremendous pleasure working with the town employees and administrators. Everyone's been very thorough, but balanced by being reasonable, which is great. Big education for me, being the first time, but it's been I've enjoyed the process. So thank you very much. In terms of music, it's other than the fact that it's a less traditional vehicle, everything about the design of the vehicle and the operation will be evocative of, your ice cream truck memories from the past. We will have traditional ice cream truck music. I don't think that there's any advantage to us like blasting that anywhere, inappropriate locations when we arrive and probably prior to departure. We will, the ding, 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 like chimey kind of music. It's important to me that, we run our business as respectfully as possible, so that, we're there, an island kitchen sort of situation, chicken box. We don't want to step on anyone's toes. I think that, doing business here on the island, it needs to be, consideration needs to be at the forefront. The last thing that we want to be is a public nuisance. What, the hope is that we create a business that is, spreading joy and adding to everyone's experience here on the island, and that people are happy to see us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions for the applicant? This is a public hearing. If anyone else is here wishing to speak on this? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to approve the ice cream truck. You beat me to it.
Ice cream. We all get excited.
You all got to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next, we'll open a public hearing to consider application for alterations of premises for seasonal all alcoholic beverages in holder license for Nantucket Island Resorts, DBA Jared Coffin House for premises located at 27 and 29 Broad Street.
Okay, so first of two hearings that are going to deal with this property. Currently, as we'll see, we have two licenses on this property. Jared Coffin House being the inn and the rooms in those two addresses, and the adjoining restaurant, Nantucket Prime, and that'll be the next hearing. What is happening here, this is the first part, is that there's going to be a switching of the interior dining room to another part of the hotel. So the prior location of the interior dining for Nantucket Prime is being renovated and turned back into 5 guest rooms. So what we're looking to do is take that space and add it to their in-holders liquor license. So it's an alteration of those premises. And again, like most liquor licenses, especially going through renovation, after approval of a license from the town and state, they will certainly need to get a final inspection from building and things of that sort. But this would just be adding these 5 rooms to the existing license. And it's a seasonal in-holder all alcohol liquor license.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Oh, wait.
Nope, sorry.
In a second. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this issue? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next is Part B, amendments to entertainment license for Nantucket Prime LLC DBA Nantucket Tap Room for premise. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead.
Yeah.
Number 3, we'll do A and B. Public hearing to consider application for alteration of premises and change of DBA for seasonal all alcoholic beverages restaurant license for Nantucket Prime LLC, DBA Nantucket Tap Room for premises located at 29 Broad Street, and also amendments to their entertainment license for Nantucket Prime LLC, DBA Nantucket Tap Room for premises located at 29 Broad Street.
Great, so same property that we're just talking about. There's 2 amendments. First we'll say is the change of DBA. It'll again be known as Nantucket Tap Room. So they are doing alteration of premises, of course, moving that interior space to the front location, basement location, to the left of the patio area. They still will have the patio area, which is currently licensed, and now they will be moving dining space into that lower area as well. So, correct. Tap room used to be and will be again. I think obviously in the entertainment license, again, we're just moving the premises and the description. There's no change in any of the conditions of the liquor license or entertainment license. It's just moving the interior space. I will say, again, obviously they are still in the midst of completing these renovations. They will need final inspections by health, building and fire, determine final occupancies. With the entertainment portion of it, again, as we get to the end of it, if there's anything that needs to be adjusted because of exits or fire or anything of that sort, that will be handled through the building and fire inspections as well.
On the entertainment license, it says four TVs.
We can, and actually, I don't know if you're
that's a
changing number of TVs and we can certainly, that's something we can make that adjustment as far as a number. I'm looking to get rid of actual numbers if we can, but I don't know if they're final on
I
that.
just raised it because I don't care how many TVs they have indoors.
It's not being added
the
to the
outdoor
outdoor.
TV that it would be great if.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could eliminate that.
Yeah,
in
I
favor
think
of
with
all of the
everything we've all
interior
been
ones.
through with that TV.
There'll be one outside.
Yeah, there's no alterations to the patio in any way.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, we'll still have the one outside, but we'll still have the screening up and all of that.
Yeah, there's no changes.
No, the ask was maybe the outside one could go away if there's a bunch inside now, because I don't think there ever were any inside before.
That would have to be a
That's
separate
just-
hearing
that's
called
just a
for that. Yeah,
thought on
yeah,
that.
yeah. But they have certainly made a lot of concessions to that. They've made a lot of, I believe, as we've gone through this the past 2 years, they've made a lot of concessions in that area, brought it down, put up some, greenery and things of that sort, so that it has definitely
We
been.
went through several hearings to
Yes.
address it and basically brought it in line with other outdoor TVs that are all in the downtown area.
Correct. So this would not be any sort of difference to the patio area. It's simply the interior
So
of
long
the
as that's
space.
not changing.
Okay.
No, nothing
No,
on the
I
patio is
just-
changing.
People still ask about it.
Yeah.
So I just thought I would bring it up.
And there are two separate licenses, so they won't be able to carry back and forth. Or
Correct.
downstairs.
And actually, as far as the liquor is concerned, this is actually helpful because there are some things that if, with an inn and a restaurant, if they have to go through one, they can't do the lobby. So this is helpful to push the hotel in all one space and the restaurant more towards the front. So this is actually helpful in that regards. But yes, those were the conditions there too as well, which they know. And when they originally did this in 2014, that was certainly specified, and they have specified that. Separate storage, separate deliveries, they do understand that and have practiced that since the original application.
I do have a question though. If we did want to take away that, take that away the TV, it'd have to be a separate hearing?
I would suggest, because this hearing was for an alteration of premises.
Okay.
I think if you're looking to discuss a certain condition, they're not looking to change conditions of their current license. I added that as a B because it was just changing the description of the premises. It was not in all, you know what I mean?
That was why I asked. There were always 4 TVs, like there were 3 interior ones.
I don't know if they've changed that in the different designs.
Oh, you're going to have to come to the mic. Sorry.
We can hear you, but not everybody at home.
The permit we opened for the previous had 4 on the permit. We've
Okay.
always had 3. 2
Okay.
inside, 1 outside.
If there were always 4,
Yeah.
that's different. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone else here who wants to speak on this? Then I'll close the public hearing.
Motion to approve, both A and B.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Number 4, public hearing to consider application for alteration of premises for seasonal all alcoholic beverage restaurant license for J Etc. LLC, DBA Orin Moore, for premises located at 2 South Beach Street. I will open that public hearing.
Yes, so this is again another alteration of premises. The first addition is the licensee was able to secure the space on the lower level on the first floor. That was a gallery, I believe, last year. They're going to use that for dining for large parties. It could fit 8 to 20 people that the upper restaurant cannot handle. So it's mostly going to be for that type of dining. And also there is some construction to the upstairs patio to add some additional seating capabilities there as well. And again, they are in the midst of making these renovations. So again, the condition that they receive final inspection and approval of the fire and building and health.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this? Any questions from the board? We'll close the public hearing.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 5, we have a public hearing to consider 2020 seasonal liquor license renewals as a whole.
Yes, so this time of year is when we go through the renewal process for the seasonal liquor licenses, as we do for the annual licenses in December. Seasonal, again, licenses are able to operate from April 1st to January 15th or a portion thereof. We have half of our 99 licenses, or more than half, are seasonal. We're the largest seasonal community in the state. So, as we have done in December, their entertainment and common vicular licenses are done on an annual basis, so those were renewed by right in December. This is purely for the liquor licenses. Again, I think I included the process that they go through in the month of March. It's legally mandated by the state that these things be signed and completed in the month of March. So this is a process to begin this renewal process and to approve the renewal process. Should anything, I think I've made this indication here, should anything happen in this process where someone doesn't complete the process or there's some sort of issue that comes up, taxes aren't paid, if something is not occupied, there would be a separate hearing to deal with a non-renewal after this process. So we're voting to renew the list that we have here that have started the process. So any questions on that process?
I should just note that I made a disclosure a few years ago in regard to some of these businesses are customers of Holgate Island Laundry, but it's so broad that I don't feel any bias.
Yeah, that's fine.
No questions.
Any questions? Close the public hearing. Oh, is there anyone wishing to speak on this? This huge audience that we have left. I'll close the public hearing.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can we make the motion as with the staff recommendation with all of that in there?
What did I
Is that
say?
okay?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously.
Yeah. But that's your recommendation, right?
Yes.
Or is that pretty much? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to write all that?
I had to reread that. What did I say? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that ends the public hearing portion of our agenda.
It's right here.
Did it fall?
We've already done the sewer regulations, so we have
Thanks,
one
Ann.
item under the town manager's report for the DPW.
Good evening. Rob McNeil, DPW. Tonight I'm looking for some input and support on the conceptual intersection improvement layout for the Washington and Francis Street. Our engineer has worked with our previous transportation planner, the town planner, and myself. I've gotten some input from Traffic Safety Work Group and some others, BPAC included, I believe. We've 4 different concepts to look at. The staff recommendation is concept C, but I thought it would be helpful to go through and at least take a look at the various considerations that have been conceptualized here. The first one takes a look at bringing Washington Street Extension in more like a T fashion. The idea was that we were exploring the option of trying to have the predominant traffic movement, which is in and out of town, and takes up better than 95% of the volumes, to be able to cycle through here. The stop sign on Washington Street Extension would sort of tee it up and make that movement a little bit more safe. The stop coming into town was ultimately relied upon to cue traffic and allow traffic that was coming both in and out of Washington Street Extension in that small little vista in the center. The problem with any of this is tractor-trailer truck traffic is essentially screeched to a halt if anyone's in that little vista area waiting to either join the traffic flow or go down Washington Street Extension. So ultimately, that was abandoned. For the next option, I think you've probably all heard by now, the governor's office and the state transportation commissioner basically are requiring roundabouts be investigated at each and every intersection effort. There had been recent discussions when this was looked at for consideration of what's called a mini roundabout. The X'd out areas, if you will, the islands, are in all these cases are fully mountable. They're basically, they'd likely be a Belgian block surface. In the end, the mini roundabout did not work in this location, mostly because of the minimal volumes contributing from the Washington Street Extension side. And so if you follow me there, 95% of the volume is moving in and out of town, Washington Street and Francis, and less than 5% is using Washington Extension. So the safety issue or the safety concern with using a roundabout solution at this location is that because you have such a infrequent use of Washington Street Extension for vehicles, it becomes a safety hazard when there is vehicle traffic because people are not expecting it. They don't see it very often enough. For the next option, we should probably go to the fourth first, the last option first. And so this was a sketch with a former transportation planner taking a look at, and it may be confusing, but I would focus on the colored features that are standing out as opposed to the background features because it was sketched onto one of the previous concepts, so it may be somewhat difficult to read. But this is a three-way stop possibility with a green painted bike lane taking people out of town and a crosswalk at the intersection. In the end, we had enough feedback. It raised a lot of discussion points, but largely you have little or no room to do an exclusive bike lane on Washington Street because of its narrowness. So introducing a exclusive bike lane for such a short stretch was not seen as reasonable. The stop controls are sort of in place, but the pedestrian access is both confusing, and it also goes through the proposed slip lane, which comes around the corner there, and it's an extremely long cross, which actually dumps you onto no pedestrian facility on Washington Street Extension, no current facility. So you can see the existing crosswalk at the bottom center of the screen, right across Francis. So if we scroll up to the recommended option, basically what you'll see is we'll start at the bottom of the screen in the center. The crosswalk, the mid-block crosswalk has actually been moved up slightly, but takes advantage of a shortened crosswalk because we're adding sidewalk, and you have the compliant sidewalk, so it's a little bit wider. So we have essentially just a 20-foot cross. The sharrows in Washington Street and Washington Street Extension would be in place to essentially encourage the use of the in-town bike path, and signage would accompany that, similar to what's out there today. The stop condition coming into town on Francis would be maintained essentially in its identical location, and likewise coming inbound on Washington Street Extension. And ultimately the slip lane is slightly angled, which provides a couple different things. One, it provides, well, three different things, actually. A fully compliant sidewalk width through the entire intersection. It provides for a little bit of an angle to allow most tractor-trailer trucks to be able to start down the slip lane before having to mount the Belgian block apron area. And thirdly, it reduces the speed coming down Francis Street out of town, where you have the mid-block crosswalk, to make sure that that's safely, or people have increased sight distance both directions, one ahead of them for pedestrians that might be in the crosswalk, and to their left over their shoulder for any cars that are turning down Francis from Washington Street Extension. So it sort of softens that. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have, or if none, move for endorsement.
I have a question, if I may. Were house moves considered in this design? And I don't mean modular moves, I mean real house moves. Because this is the main thoroughfare where houses out of town or north of town come through. So I just want to make sure, as always, that there's plenty of room because this is our main truck route.
Well, the width is only increasing through this whole throat. There's no restrictions that would dissuade or...
It gets driven over.
Right? Yeah, it's all drivable. The entire intersection's drivable for trucks to swing in and through there. But no longer will tractor-trailer trucks have to go into the inbound Francis Street lane like they do today. They'll be able to stay on the outbound lane. But house moves are obviously very exclusive, and if you're traveling out with a police detail, those are, it's a one-way movement and it's unimpeded by traffic.
And all that hashed stuff, the hashed area is flush.
That's
but
correct.
It's Belgian block.
Yep.
Yeah, looks good.
Could you walk me through how the traffic would move, like if you're coming from Washington Street Extension, or if you're going out of town to Washington Street Extension, would you stay straight?
You would stay straight, just like today.
Okay.
And outbound would be identical. You come up to the stop sign, and then you can go right or left, straight or left.
Sorry, and then, one quick, is there a yield for the slip lane?
There's a yield. There's not a yield sign. There's the pavement markings will be down there. The shark's teeth, as they call them, is a yield mark.
Okay.
I don't believe there's adequate space for the signage for a yield sign there, simply because you have the tractor-trailer truck movements through there. Anytime we've had signage in or near these kind of wide turning movements, they don't last very long.
Mm-hmm. And so basically, they will be yielding in case someone was taking a left off of Washington Street Extension.
Correct.
Okay. No, I think it looks good.
What were the comments from Traffic and Safety and BPAC?
They liked the transportation planners' movement of bikes through, and they were, I can't remember all of them, but I would say that there was actually some pause on the mini roundabout, but the explanation of, as I had given, sort of people understood. There's certainly, we wanted to make sure we maintained the left movement out of Washington Street Extension. And again, there was a brief exploration of eliminating the stop sign on Washington Street Extension and just allowing free movement all the way up and down Washington Street. I think in the end, people felt that it would be too much of an operational change to accept at this time. Keep in mind, this is what's happening at the surface and literally just the intersection lines. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface, as some of you might have experienced recently. This is involving replacement of drainage systems and other utilities at the same time. So there's a tremendous amount of work, and there's not a lot of room to take care of all that stuff here.
So, Christy, BPAC did not approve this one. BPAC wanted option 4. We did not. This one is good, but it's not. This is a car-centric and truck-centric design. This is not for pedestrians or bicycles. Pedestrians are not going to walk down to that crosswalk. They just won't. They're going to cross. They're going to find a weird way to jump across. And then bikes, in this design, maybe there can be something put in here, but there's no paint. There's no area. I mean, Robbie said a bike lane was not reasonable, but we just spent 20 years trying to figure out how to put a bike path behind the duck pond, Wash Street Extension, and we want bikes to go across here. So I like option 4 or some version of it, because this doesn't push bikes straight across. We have to find a safe way. Well, we have to guide them, direct them, and find a safe way to get bikes to go straight here when they're coming outbound, when they're coming from downtown. Now, a commuter who rides every day, they can take this corner because they know the area, but tourists who are trying to get, or visitors who are trying to get to Milestone Rotary, we want them to go straight. We want them to avoid the truck route. And I don't think this does it well. Rob, maybe there'll be something else added later.
So one thing we are exploring is the use of color. And the Sharrows, traditional Sharrows started with simply just the white symbols. The more recently, they've essentially put the white symbols down on a green border to really give a contrast and both lead the bikes the way that you show them which direction to go, and also have the cars respect what's going on. And back to my comment, I think the specific comment from the engineer, I'll be happy to read with regard to the bike lane. The idea is that we, as a design effort, is to ultimately seek either bike lanes or some semblance of that all the way into town, but not to do it in short stretches like this through this intersection, but to build on the successes that we've had and to encourage straight through movement. So the option 3, or the concept C, does that in that it provides the Sharrow. I mean, the Sharrow locations might be able to be modified slightly to encourage people to continue straight through and let them remind them that they should be going straight. We do have signage at, I believe it's Meter Street right there, that indicates that they should be going straight as well. And if you remember, on the opposite side of the in-town bike path, last year we did a fair amount of tweaking of the signage to make sure that it stuck out and that people were actually using Goose Pond and Washington Street Extension as opposed to Union and Francis. So it may take some effort to tweak that outbound sign so that it's more noticeable for bike users.
I don't think it needs a 3 or 4 foot bike lane. It just needs some kind of green or white dots with more Sharrows that says, look, go this way. So a biker just doesn't even have to think about it, right? We could be creative with what the space that we have. I just don't want to approve this and just have one Sharrow there. I just don't think it's enough.
Actually, just now I see what you mean about the crosswalk as well. I hadn't been thinking about it like that, but I don't know. I would kind of agree that people aren't going to walk all the way down there. In the 4th option, there's some sort of
there was a crosswalk that sort of went through the alignment of the Vista for vehicles. It basically, in both cases, I'll just read from the engineer's notes here. There is no existing bike lane facilities along the roadway. we felt it would be inappropriate to introduce a short bike lane at the intersection. Due to the high bike volumes and narrow roadway section, we recommend maintaining shared lane use. There is not enough roadway width on Washington Street extension to receive a bike lane and have a two-lane roadway because it's only 22 feet at the intersection. There was another note about the crosswalk. The crosswalk and bike lane was removed from the layout. As noted before, we're concerned that the mountable island would be perceived as a pedestrian refuge and would place pedestrians at risk. So the refuge that's there, or the Belgian Block Island, is mountable, but it's not for vehicles per se. It's for trucks to be able to go there. So it sort of tells vehicles you shouldn't be here, but if you had to for some reason, it's still drivable, similar to the roundabout or in Sparks Avenue. Further, the layout showed a crosswalk along a slip ramp that does not lead to a refuge. This is undesirable and unsafe condition, which basically was they were bringing the crosswalk through over to an area that has no ramp or sidewalk facility. So encouraging pedestrians to that situation is just not advised.
So if I like throw in there, from an engineer standpoint who doesn't know Nantucket, this is the most safe option. But if you're here every day and you live here, it's just people are going to walk straight across. They just are. I'm there 15 times a day. I've been there for 10 years with the bike tours. They're just going to walk straight across.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do this, what's going to cost to change it when we see that everybody's just walking straight across? And then the bikes, an engineer I know thinks a bike lane has to be 4 feet because that's what it's standard. We can't put that there. But some kind of painted creativity to dotted line something to get them across. I don't want to call it bike lanes. I don't want to get caught up in semantics.
And I don't disagree that people were going to do what they're going to do. I think what we're getting into is similar to the discussion we had with Matt a couple weeks ago. Why can't we do this or that when it comes to either mini roundabouts or something similar? And I simply said, we have engineers on the other end that are stamping plans for construction here, and they need to follow, because they're ultimately liable. They're liable for situations that could place people into unsafe conditions. And if people are going to take those opportunities to do that on their own, that's very different than having someone design something that's unsafe. It puts their essentially their license and their livelihood in jeopardy. This very well in the future may include some level of boardwalk or other. I know there's lots of talk of what's going to happen along land bank properties along the waterfront. There's lots of discussions about making those the bike connections into town and maybe a bike lane or a separate bike facility. And I think that this area would certainly be affected by that. Right now, we have 20 feet to work with, and that's what they're telling us.
Well, what Rob's referring to is 8 to 10 years minimum away from getting a bike lane on land bank. It's part of their bigger plan is buying all those buildings and putting whether it's a boardwalk or
there's still houses in
but
the way
that's
of that.
it's a long ways away. I can't approve this. So you guys can outvote me. I'll pull a Matt. Like you guys can outvote me, but here's where I'm going to stand. I just don't.
Well, was there any ability to put something on the water side of the street?
The right-of-way lines are right there. The dash lines to the north. I could point them out with a.
I don't want to pretend to be an engineer in any way, but can everything just move this way so that something could go along the water edge?
Sorry, the right-of-way line is right here. This dashed dark line. So we're literally bringing, and right now, if you use this, we can go to the last plan actually, just to, because it shows the actual slightly. This section here was widened, actually. It was paved on, and that's on land bank property. And that's where trucks have to go to be able to navigate through this intersection currently. It's totally outside of the town's right-of-way.
Right, but
It
now
goes
that that's there, could we now turn that into a sidewalk so you could cross here to go down Washington Street?
It doesn't continue. I mean, is it something that could be, it's outside of the right-of-way again, it's a different, there's another property owner there. And so again, this whole idea was, I think part of this grand swap was simply, let's put in a flattened corner here to make it easier for everybody to navigate through here. We've looked at a lot of different options here. There is certainly some ways to go. There's a sidewalk that actually picks up over on this side of Washington Street a little further down. And I know that the planner has already started taking steps to look at a sidewalk in this general area. So it's quite possible somewhere down the road that could happen, but that's not set up. That's not part. That's just not there yet.
Can I just ask, was it considered at all to sort of cross before here, sort of dogleg come back? Because I think in order to use the one down here, and only because my parents did this with luggage, they walked from the boat to Sales. And I think there are, that's kind of a route that people would take. You're going to have to know that sidewalk exists. So they're going to get to this intersection, tourists who most likely are walking, and they're not going to know this exists, and they're just going to cut right across. And I could see them being more likely to cut over, use a strip of sidewalk, and then see another bit of sidewalk over here and come back over.
So we absolutely did look at all this.
Yeah.
My point is that we don't have right-of-way to be able to move forward with those options.
Mhm.
So that's why we're at concept C at this point.
So we're at a point where essentially an engineer wouldn't stamp anything that allows pedestrians access through that intersection.
Correct.
So we're left with something that we know isn't going to be most likely be used properly.
So my question is, do you need approval tonight? Because I know we just got these today, so I haven't really digested all of it, and I'd like to be able to go and see the space a little bit more
We do not.
and kind of ask a couple more questions.
I'm just looking for endorsement to be able to start the full design. This is concept levels.
Okay.
Can we put it off
Can we
1 week?
actually we don't even have copies of these.
Sure.
So maybe we could look at them and rediscuss this in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I am glad that you abandoned the roundabout idea.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have a chance to just think about it more, come up with better questions, or to understand the flow a little bit better and the option that we have, if that's all right.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, the one thing I did like about, I forgot to say the one positive thing, Rob, was the little bump out there of slowing the traffic down. I thought that was smart.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I was worried that people were, not trucks, right, just cars are going to zoom around that.
through.
And Francis and Union, people zoom around that, but that's not really a major crosswalk. There's not a lot of people walking there, but there is here. So I'm just trying to make us, look through the lens of pedestrians and bicyclists. We're asking people to use alternate forms of transportation. So we gotta, it doesn't look like the engineer's gonna, there's a good engineering way to make it safer,
Yeah.
but we look at it again.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Committee reports.
I do not have any.
We have a senior center committee meeting on Thursday with the architect, and I think we're getting really close to a recommendation to the board. So that
Great.
will be coming.
I was just going to comment on the beginning of the meeting that I think it's really time for us to look at race relations in the town and training. I know when we were at Mass Municipal Association, there's organizations that do this. We've reached a point where you want to be proactive, and now we're being reactive, and I think it's really time to start looking at that. One of the things I thought about is we kept saying this wasn't the proper space, but what is the proper space for a community to come and tell us about their grievances with the town, and where does that exist, and how do we create that structure? But those were just my reflections kind of throughout the meeting that I thought I should bring up.
Yeah, thank you. I agree, and I think there has to be resources for us, for town, for municipalities, as well as for community members, and I think it is something that we did talk about and is important, but it definitely has fallen through the cracks. So
I definitely agree with those things, but I also want to apologize for not getting a better control of the meeting and allowing staff to be more personally attacked.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to Libby, and I'm sorry to the police department for just not getting a firmer handle on how the meeting was going.
I would like to say something. I'm sorry too. That was personally really difficult for me. And I didn't get any feeling from the board of support. So that is a message that a lot of departments have heard now. So you need to think about that. I agree with Christy entirely in what you're all saying about race relations and the town. But you also need to understand, and the public needs to understand, this was one side of a story. It wasn't accurate, it wasn't complete, and it was not appropriate. It goes completely against the board's public comment parameters. So having discussions is great. Having places where people can go is appropriate and healthy and fine, but there's more to this story than was told by the individuals that were here. Much more to the story.
Yeah, and I need to get a little bit of understanding as chair on the appropriate things to say when the meeting gets out of hand like that. So I'm gonna work on getting that advisement.
It's the personal attacks. Public comment, people are always gonna come in and rip us, right? Rip us and town staff, we have to take it, but not when it gets personal. And I was trying to step in and was yelling, and so I really didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Yep.
But I will say, HR director, Rob McNeil, myself, Libby, I've been working to bring racial equity workshops and speakers here in 2020, and a big one this fall. It's pretty expensive. I'm working with the Community Foundation and some other nonprofits to try to bring those, exactly what you're asking for, Christy, to bring it here. Maybe not a venue to air your grievances, but more of educational.
And the Community Foundation is bringing Stephen Young on April 15th at the Dreamland from 9 to 12, so that will address some education.
Yeah. So I apologize to Libby and staff too. I was kind of I wasn't sure what to do. Not being chair, I was looking at you, and people need to have a place to talk, even if it's a little off, but it's the personal attacks that can't happen.
Phil, would you like to say something?
I think it's should be obvious to everyone that you are not free to speak while that particular episode is under investigation by the DA's department, and so you're not free to run your mouths. But I was thinking of something else that was very popular in the last half of the last century. A lot of people used to have ombudsmans who would, to whom someone could go and could really raise. Now they've gone out of favor. Maybe it's because they just for some people they never worked, but they do work. But I felt that they were working in the 70s and 80s and 90s to have an ombudsman who was supposed to be the interface with people who didn't otherwise have what they considered a proper way to speak.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you very much.
And I do, I just want to say, I don't know if it's sort of a review of public comment or some sort of etiquette around meetings, but the meeting that I was chair at that you weren't here for, one of the applicants I felt was the language and the tone I thought was rude. And to be honest, it was Libby that said something on my behalf because I felt tongue-tied. So I don't know if that is something, again, I think meetings deteriorating to a place where board members have to defend each other, others, et cetera. I think finding a way to have the public comment be productive and respectful, as well as the rest of the meeting. So.
I'm wondering if there's something that I should say at the beginning, setting the parameters more clearly, like at every meeting, of what's allowable and what is not under public comment.
I think there'd be nothing to lose because we have had some issues.
I'm just wondering if there isn't a way that we can address this from a community point of view, because the issue with respect to personal attack, which was here, which was just disgusting, is not limited to what we heard tonight. Although I'm not on Facebook, I hear a lot of these personal attacks with respect to members of administration or other people in the town being attacked personally on Facebook. And so there's got to be something that I think as a community we need to address, that this is totally inappropriate and unacceptable behavior. And we need to find out if there is a way to be able to person have to paying a price for doing that, because you should not be able to get away with doing something as disrespectful and as awful as occurred tonight and not have to pay any price for it. And I don't know the answer, but.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.